episode 85 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So it is officially spooky season.
Yeah, my fave.
Yeah. I love, the next 3 months, October, December. November, I could take or leave. Yeah. But I sort of also really still enjoy November because there's, a build-up to Christmas.
Yeah. It's it's okay. It's an okay month. It's not bad. It's not...
Yeah.
There's a long holiday. Long weekend, normally.
Yeah. Better than, February, March.
Oh, 100%, yes.
Anyway, so... today, because in honor of spooky season, we are going to do candy-themed Would You Rather today. So our candy-themed Would You Rather is candy corn or molasses candy.
And, the molasses candies are specifically those, orangey ones that you would always get. And I don't know if that's a regional thing. Did you not get those?
So, for those of you that don't know, when we say molasses candy, we're referring to, almost you see, taffy, saltwater taffy, sort of, wrapped in a similar way. It's, wrapped in this, waxy little thing. There's no, brand on it. It's just, a generic wrapper, and it's, a long sort of rectangle. And, it's really chewy, and, yeah. But it's controversial.
Yeah, it's got, orange on the packaging, and it's very Halloween-y, but it's also, I remember when I used to get them, I'd always give them to my dad. It's like a dad candy.
Yeah, or, it's like the candies, when you had, a grandmother with, a candy dish.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you would find this candy in the candy dish.
Yeah.
So, I guess...
Both controversial candies.
Yeah.
We assume everyone knows what candy corn is. It's
the little triangle... Well, it's not a triangle because it's 3D, but...
Yeah.
I don't know what the 3D image is called. Pyramid?
It's in the shape of a kernel of corn.
Is it?
Candy corn.
I mean, I guess I just always look at it as an upside down triangle, like a cone. When I see it, I think of a cone, but I avoid it. So I haven't looked at it closely, and it's orange, white, and yellow in color.
I didn't know that you could do this, but you can stack the candy corn, and they actually look like a corn on the cob.
That's fun.
Yeah. Me and my sister have been sending memes about candy corn because we both love it and everyone hates it. But there's one where a candy corn is holding a sign and it says, "I hate you too." And it's my favorite.
So I guess you already spoiled it, but which one do you prefer?
I just love candy corn. I know everybody, so many people hate it, but it's just sugar. It just tastes like sweet. So I definitely would pick candy corn, but I do know a lot of people hate it.
Yeah, so I'm on the firm hate side of candy corn. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like looking at it. I don't like anything that involves emulating candy corn. I'm just no, hard pass. So I would 100% take the molasses candy. Now, as a child, I wouldn't take either of these.
Mm-hmm.
I would get rid of both of them, along with Smarties, not Canadian Smarties, because Canadian Smarties are called Rockets, but in other places they're called Smarties. It's the little tube in plastic wrap.
Yeah, we call them Rockets. You mean?
We call them Rockets, yeah, but most other places call them Smarties. But we have a chocolate candy called Smarties, so these are called Rockets. So yeah, it's they're little powdery candies, kind of like sweet tarts. And I hate those too.
I love them.
I don't, it's a texture thing, I guess, for me, because like obviously flavor wise, you're right, it's a sugar, it just tastes like sugar.
Yeah.
But the texture, the powdered texture, gross. I don't like it.
Yeah. I just put like the whole pack in my mouth and go. Rah, 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 rah.
Yeah. See, so the molasses candy I really appreciate, more so as an adult. Because I've grown into my love of taffy. Yeah. And there's actually so my husband's family is from China. So there are a lot of Chinese sweets that get passed around at certain points of the year. So there's one called White Rabbit. And they're like, I guess it's like a taffy. I don't know, but it's so good. So like, I've entered the world of like these chewy candies, and I really like them. So
yeah,
but that's as an adult.
And taffy is also like a big thing here, like East Coast kind of. Like specifically here, it'd be Purity, but like Nova Scotia is very big on the salted taffies as well.
Yeah, and sea like salt. Quality Street. Quality Street, I think, is actually a British like assortment of different chocolates and taffies and stuff and caramels, and they're extremely popular here too.
That's more of a Christmas thing.
It is more of a Christmas thing. Oh, you're 100% correct. But when we think of like chewy taffies and that sort of thing, my mind goes there too.
Yeah. Yeah. Also tasty. Really love any of those, like, you're not sure what you're going to get things. And then you have to, like, look at the thing and you're, like, picking out which candy or chocolate you want. And then you have to look in the box and find the right one. It's all just fun.
Yeah. But again, you're right. Those are more, like, Christmassy things. Like, I think Halloween, it's just you get what you get and you don't get upset.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember being a kid and, like, I would organize everything into different bags. So, like, my mom would give me a ton of, like, Ziploc and freezer bags. So I would split everything up. So, like, all of my, like, one kind of chocolate bar would go in one bag, another kind in another bag. Then all my gum would go in a bag. All my, like, hard candies would go in another bag. Lollipops in a different bag. And then chips would be in the big pillowcase. And I would... Yeah. My mom was amazing. Like, I got to keep my candy in my closet. Like, my parents didn't, like, take it and ration it.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I didn't go crazy. Yeah.
Probably because you were allowed to keep it in your room.
Maybe.
You weren't afraid they were going to take it from you.
No. So it was great because then... And that would be, like, the fun thing to do, right? And that makes me sound really lame. But, like, we would get home with all of our pillowcases full of candy. And all I'd be like was, okay, time to sort. Yeah. Like, I just couldn't wait to see how much of each thing I got.
I think we would have been really good friends. Because I was the same. Like, one of my favorite activities as a kid was Mom had this giant canister of buttons. And I would just sit and sort them. So but I did the same thing with my Halloween candy too. I think, we would have been good friends as children as well.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll probably have a couple more Halloween-y themed talks over the next couple of weeks. Because we love spooky season. But for now, we are going to dive back into Fourth Wing. So just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy. So this is week 2 with Fourth Wing. We are reading chapters 10 to 19 today. So last week, we met our main character, Violet. She was pushed into a training school, well, a sector of the training school that her mother runs, called the Rider's Quadrant, where she has to learn and train how to fly on the back of a dragon. There is a huge death toll associated with this quadrant of the school, and already she has lost a friend, well, an acquaintance.
Dylan, no last name.
Dylan, no last name, yes. And she is already the target of several people that want to kill her, which is completely legal. And
most of the time, but not when you're sleeping.
Yes. And as well, her best friend from childhood, Dane, last week at the very end, asked her to please let him sneak her out of the Rider's Quadrant and join the Scribe Quadrant, which is where she originally wanted to go. And she told him she'd think about it, even though she doesn't really want to, but he is so desperate to keep her safe that she is considering it.
Yeah.
So this week, it's gauntlet time. So we've heard a lot about the gauntlet, I think, last week, but we didn't really know what it entailed or explained it.
Yeah.
So essentially, the gauntlet is like, there are a couple of really big hurdles in this school. So the first thing is like the parapet, which is the initial crossing, and it's what makes you into a student. So before you cross the parapet, you're just a regular person. Once you step into the quadrant, then that makes you a cadet. Mm-hmm. So that's the first big hurdle. And then you just have classes and training, and it's sort of like whatever. But then it's gauntlet time. And then after gauntlet time, it's the threshing. So there's 3 sort of big events that lead up to you getting your dragon. So this is number 2. Essentially, it's like American Ninja Warrior on, dialed up a million.
100% what I was thinking when I was reading it. I was like, oh, so they're doing American Ninja Warrior. Like, literally the last thing, I'm like, that is... the
warp.
The last thing, and exactly.
Yeah. So essentially it's just a big obstacle course that they have to run through. So they are training, they're allowed to train on it. They get a couple of weeks with it.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't get to train on it every single day. They have to split their time with the other first years. So they'll get like 4 or 5 runs on it before they have to do it for real. All of their time on it in training, there are like ropes placed strategically so that they can save themselves if they fall. Well, anyway, so it's a time-based task.
Mm-hmm.
So, it is Violet's and her team. It's their turn to practice on the gauntlet for the first time. So Violet and her friend, Rhiannon, are looking at it with like awe and fear. But, anyway, so they're like afraid of it, rightfully so. They've never trained on it before. But one of their squad members, Oralee, which I love, I know last name, so like... Sorry. It's like the Star Trek red shirt thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like her name is Oralee. I love the name. It's so cute. So she's really excited because her dad actually built a gauntlet in their backyard for them to practice on. I guess he was a rider and had survived and retired. And so he was like, if you guys are going to be riders, we're going to practice on the gauntlet. So, yeah, so her and her brother used to practice on it and she said it was, like, really fun. So, Tynan is another member of their squad, like, pipes up, like, oh, the reason it's called the gauntlet is to weed out the weaklings and to make sure that the dragons come back year after year. But he's, like, looking at Violet when he says it, so, like, he's obviously insinuating that she is the weakling.
Yeah. And I get it. It's like I do appreciate there's actually reasons that people are attacking her and that people are against her. Like, I get it. Because we did read another book and I was like, why do people keep trying to kill her for no reason?
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, this is dumb. And like this one, it actually makes sense. But I'm still like, just stop. It's getting old.
My issue with this specific moment is it makes sense for this moment. right? Because she is small, she is slight, she's not muscular. Like, her training on the gauntlet, I do think, and we learn, it is a huge challenge for her, and it is a weakness for her. And like I said before, the gauntlet is timed, and they're not timed individually, they're timed as a squad. So if one of them struggles, they all struggle. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think, like, this book, like, Violet is supposed to portray, like, an illness, or, like, supposed to be representation of people that have chronic illnesses, basically.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know, it's never really stated if it's a specific one or anything. It doesn't really matter. But it is kind of, like, this is how it probably would be in our world, too, if somebody tried to get into a career like this, and people would, it wouldn't be trying to kill her, because
that's frowned upon.
That's frowned upon in our society, but in their society, it is not. So, like, I get it in that case, too, and yeah, so that's definitely another angle to it.
Yeah. Anyway, so Tynan sort of said that, was sort of being an asshole, but this other guy, Riddick, gets pissed off that Tynan is being an asshole, because he said, like, and they're sort of like, oh, it looks like Tynan has made friends with Jack Barlow, who is sort of Violet's primary bully, I'll call him, like, one who's trying to kill her the most.
Primary bully if your bully actually killed you.
Yes.
Or tried.
And Oren Seifert, who Violet actually beat in the fights, in the bouts last week, because she poisoned him.
This book is wild.
Yeah. So...
because she just poisoned him, NBD.
Yeah. So Tynan has sort of made friends with them, so now he's like, all they do is like, talk about how Violet is the weakling, and how they have to cull the weak, like, to make the wing strong, and blah, blah, blah. So Tynan is now, like, joining in on the, oh, you're a weakling.
Yeah.
But, like, and Riddick is pissed mostly because he's like, one, you're joining those assholes, so, like, sucks to be you. But two, like, they're on the same team, so, like, we should be nice to each other. Like, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. That's my High School Musical moment.
But I do think the other thing, too, is, like, they're actually, like, your squad is supposed to be
your safe place.
Yeah. Like, they are supposed to technically be nice to each other. Like, it's not just... it's almost like a rule. Which, like, you can't force people to like each other, but they try. They try.
Yeah. But Tynan then reminds them all that, like, their scores are combined, and that's how the order for the procession is decided. So the procession is when all the dragons line up on, like, this big, huge field, and all the first-year squads, like, essentially walk past all the dragons, so the dragons can sort of see, like, get a feel for everybody, see who they might like to pair up with, and also gives them a chance to get rid of any squad members that they don't think will cut it.
Yeah.
So the closer you are to the front of the procession, the better for you.
Yeah, well, the dragons know that you did this test to be first, so they'll think that the first group is the stronger group, which, like, I guess makes sense.
And also, I'm thinking that maybe the dragons' patience will be a little bit higher near the beginning, so they'll be less likely to kill you, as opposed to further down.
There's so much death in this book, it is wild.
Yeah. Like, everything is out to kill you.
Yeah. It's... like, my niece wants to read it, and I'm like, there is a lot of death. She's like, I've read Harry Potter. I'm like, I don't think you understand.
Yeah. Also, so then there's a professor there, Professor Emeterio. He is the same guy that handles their, like, fighting class, their combat class. So he is there, and he tells them that they have an hour to all make it up. and that their hand-to-hand combat training is suspended for the next couple of weeks, so they can focus on the gauntlet. And then he says, like, you guys are so far the only squad that has stayed intact and had nobody die since Parapet, which is, like, wild. Mm-hmm. So, like, good on you guys. But then he insinuates, like, how proud Dane would be, because Dane is their squad leader. And Tynan then sort of, like, says under his breath that, like, he's definitely proud of Violet, and, like, insinuates that they're sleeping together and that Jack Barlow told him so. And she is going to, like, speak up and say, we're not sleeping together, actually. But then she's like, actually, it's not his business whether she is or not.
Because she kind of had a crush on him.
Yeah, rightfully so. But, like, I actually really like this because, like, she shouldn't have to say anything. Like, exactly. It is not his business. So, like, if he wants to think they're sleeping together, then that's fine. But Rhiannon next to her actually shuts it down and is like, dude, they've actually just been friends since they were kids. So, like, and, like, don't you know anything? Like, Dane's dad is Violet's mom's, like, aide, like, assistant, pretty much. Mm-hmm. So, like, and he's like, oh, really? Like, and, like, actually shuts him up.
Yeah. It's just so, like, I don't know. It's just so dumb. You're like, how do you not know this? Like...
Yeah. I guess he's not super into politics?
Yeah. I guess so.
So Violet thinks, like, oh yeah, it's pretty good that Dane actually isn't here to hear the comments, because sleeping within, like, the chain of command, so, like, her sleeping with her squad leader, her section leader, wing leader, anything like that, is frowned upon. Like, they don't mind you sleeping with other cadets, but you shouldn't sleep with, like, higher ups.
Well, and even, like, I even think it's kind of fine. It was insinuated last week, and I don't think we really said it, but it was insinuated that Dane was very close with one of the other female wing leaders, but she wasn't his wing leader. So It was kind of insinuated that they slept together, but that's fine, because she's not his higher up.
Yes.
So it's, like, a bit dumb.
Yeah. Anyway, so, like, I guess Tynan insinuating that they were sleeping together when they're not, Dane would, like, punish him and put him on dish duty for a month. Mm. And then she's like, Xaden would just beat him up. And she's thinking in her head, like, so we're still at a point in the story, and I'm saying we're still at a point. We're at a point in the story where her and Xaden are still, like, enemies. Because, like, Xaden, who is her wing leader, apparently wants to kill her. So, like, but she has this, like, undeniable attraction to him. Yeah. So, you know.
It's hard. It's hard life.
So she's like, shit, I just compared the two of them. That sucks. I don't want to do that. Because she doesn't want to be attracted to him because he wants to kill her.
Yes, desperately, according to what we know.
Yeah. So we move on. They're going to get, actually, so I was wrong before. They get 9 practice sessions before they do their official ascent. So they'll get to do it 10 times total. And there are ropes every 6 feet to grab if you're about to fall. But it does cost 30 seconds to grab. So, like, on your timed ascent, if you grab a rope, it costs you 30 seconds. But better grab the rope than die.
Yeah.
100%. But if you don't make it up the gauntlet, then you don't get to do the presentation. So, like, even if the rest of your team makes it up, if you don't, they will all get to go to presentation and you will not. And if you're not at presentation, then you don't get a dragon. So it's very important that she gets up the gauntlet.
Yeah.
So they watch Sawyer do it first because he's technically a second year, but he's not. He's a first year. So he made it through all the training last year and a dragon just didn't pick him. So he's done it all before. So there's a few different phases So there's single log spinning. So, like, I guess one log vertically and you have to, like, run across it. There's raised pillars. There's a wheel. There's giant hanging monkey bars. There's balls, like, that you gotta grab. There's shaking pillars. There's, like, a whole bunch of spinning logs. There's a giant chimney. And then there's a massive ramp at the end that you have to run up and then grab the cliff to haul yourself up to the top. Mm-hmm. So, Violet watches, like, everybody else take their turns. They don't, like, I guess the professor has them go in, like, phases. So, like, he'll have somebody go and they'll complete, like, 2 or 3 of the tasks, and then he'll send the next person on so that multiple people are on the gauntlet at the same time. So most people struggled, including Tynan, who actually gets stuck on the giant hanging balls. And so he grabs the rope, and then he gets down. And she's like, yeah.
Wild.
He gave up, essentially, on his first try. So she was like, that's stupid. He could have used the rope to, like, further himself along, but he didn't. So it's Violet's turn. So she does okay. She does her technique about reciting facts about dragons, like, under her breath. And she is slow going, but she makes it pretty far. Orly is actually right behind her. So they get to the rolling logs. So it's a bunch in a row, and they roll opposite each other. So, like, one will roll clockwise, then the next one rolls counterclockwise, and so on. Orly sort of, like, coaches Violet through them because, again, she's been doing this for a really long time in her backyard.
And, like, I think her father, like, told her about him, too, because, like, he's obviously done it all. But, like, it's wild that Violet's mother didn't warn her about anything or didn't tell her any of the things that she was going to have to do.
But I also feel like Violet's mother, like, well, no, you're right, because she had 6 months to train. So, like, her mother could have said at any point in those 6 months, okay, if you're going to do the gauntlet, here's what you're going to do. It just affirms to me that, like, Violet's mother doesn't love her.
Yeah, like, she doesn't care if she dies, 100%.
Yeah. Or, like, she feels like handouts are, like...
Yeah. Or she wants her to die.
Yeah. Who knows? So Orly is, like, loving her life, and she's like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like, she's like, I can't believe I get to do this. So, like, she's in her element, and Violet makes it across the logs, meaning she only has 2 obstacles left. So she got even farther than Tynan did, which is, like, amazing.
Fuck you, Tynan.
Yep. So she turns to watch Orly do the spinning logs after Orly already, like, sort of gave her some advice on how to do them.
So we know she's going to be good at it.
Yeah. So she's doing a great job when all of a sudden a dragon roars and flies above them. So their home, which is called the Vale, is apparently close by. So because the dragon roared and flew above them, Orly gets startled, and she falls off the log, and she doesn't even have a chance to grab the rope. So she falls off the log, and sadly, she dies. Literally
after they're like, your squad has everybody still alive.
Yeah. I think that was like a hint moment there.
Yeah. A hint and then no last name. You're like, oh god, she's doomed.
Yeah. So the next morning, Violet is sad. So the way they do, every single morning they go to roll call, and they call out the names of everybody who has died. So she listens to Orly's name be called, and she lets 1 tear fall, but that's it. Like, she's trying not to mourn because she knows that, like, she can't get close to people.
Yeah, every morning, there's somebody on this roll call. And I think she even says, like, today is larger than most because most of them tried the gauntlet the day before. Yeah. So, like, it's wild. This is, like, so traumatic. I get that they're 20. Like, they're not children. Mm-hmm. I technically understand that in my head. But it's also, like, this is so traumatic and awful for anybody to deal with.
Yeah. So they find out a little later that Orly's parents refuse to collect her body and things. So they're like, I guess there are two options. Like, either you can come and collect their stuff and do like your own sort of ceremony where you are, or you can refuse to do that and the school just buries you in a school plot. I don't know.
Yeah.
So her parents have refused. And a part of me is like, that's a dick thing to do, but it also, maybe their grief is so bad that they can't.
But then you're also like, her father was a rider, and I think she says her brother was, so it's almost like, are they just like, well, this was always an option, and she failed?
Yeah.
Like, you're almost like, are they complete assholes that were like,
yes,
well, yeah. It's so sad.
We don't know.
No.
Anyway, so Violet decides she's going to do the quote-unquote ceremony instead. And we don't really know what that entails as of yet. Dane wants to go with her, but she says, no, I want to do this alone. He asks how she did on the rest of the course, and he says that she got stuck on the chimney. Apparently she's too short, but like obviously she's gonna have to figure something out.
Yeah.
So, it says here, on Gauntlet Day, you either fall to your death or you finish. There's no climbing down.
Yeah. Like, I guess you could be there forever.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you can't just not complete it. You have to keep trying until you either get to the top or you die.
So she goes up to what's called the burn pit with Orly's pack. Like, she said she feels so bad that, like, she is dead and Violet is alive. And that Orly should have been the one that lived because she was so good at the gauntlet. She had rehearsed and practiced so much. Like, it's wild that she is the one that died and Violet lived. So she throws Orly's pack into the burn pit. So this is the ceremony, like burning their things in this like big ceremonial like pit. But the pit is up high. It's not on the ground where you hope burn pits would be. It's like one of the highest points of the school. So she goes back down, walks through the courtyard. She's like being introspective and thinking about her thoughts and her chances of survival and like sort of like being down on herself. Like, if Orly died, like I have no chance, and like, you know. So she notices like 3 people in cloaks coming back from like the outer walls. Like, they were outside the school. And she wonders like who it is and what they were doing and why they're coming back this late. So it's Xaden and his 2 buddies, Garrick and Bodhi. So she hides in an alley because I guess she doesn't want them to see her. And she feels prickles on her skin. So like she knows that this is Xaden's like shadows or whatever. So she's like, he knows I'm here. But like she's not afraid. Because she's, at this point, she's like, if he wants to kill her, just, like, do it already. Because she's done.
Yeah.
She's done, like, being afraid and walking on eggshells. Anyway, so he sends Garrick and Bodhi inside, and Violet just comes out of the shadows. And they flirt a ton. It is great. And he's like, are you going to tell on me this time? And she's like, no, I really don't care where you've been. But then she says, like, if you're planning on killing me, just to do it already. Because I'm sick of waiting around. And he's like, what's gotten into you? Like, why are you so upset? And she doesn't want to tell him because he's a wing leader. Like, she's like, he's so good at being a rider. Like, he wouldn't understand why she's feeling the way she's feeling. But he demands to know. He's like, you need to tell me.
I'm your superior. I'm forcing you.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, you want to kill her, do you? But you really want to know why she's upset. Anyway, so he demands to know why she's upset. So she tells him she can't make it up the chimney. Like, there's no physical way at all. I think it's like just from the description that I read, I feel like the chimney is like, it's a big round, like, it's just an oversized chimney, right? Like a big round cube that's like a long tube.
Yeah.
But square, like a square tube. But like, I think the way it is like, you have to like shimmy up it, and like she doesn't have the reach to grab the sides to help her get up. I think that's the issue.
It makes sense. I can't picture anything. Like,
I know.
Except for that one wall on the end that I'm like, ninja. Mm. My brain is like, you can't do this, sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, so she's like, I can't get up the chimney. Like, there's no physical way. I'm too short. I can't do it. So I'm gonna die on the gauntlet, and you'll be happy about it because then you won't have to go through the trouble of killing me. So like, she's in a mood.
Yeah, she's like kind of spiraling.
Yeah, she's spiraling. She's feeling some kind of way. Yeah. So he says his response to her is, killing her won't be any trouble, Violence. So he calls her Violence because that's his nickname for her. So he says, killing her won't be any trouble. But keeping her alive causes the majority of his trouble.
Yeah.
So already we're like, oh my god, he likes her.
Enemies.
Yes.
Ugh. It is. I just love when the guy falls first.
Yes.
And she's like, I still hate you. We're enemies. You're trying to kill me. And he's like, keeping you alive is so hard. I spend all my time trying to keep you alive.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much.
Right? Yes.
So she tells him that, like, hope is the problem in this place. Because even though, like, she was trained her whole life to be a scribe, like, she obviously can't say no when her mother gives her an order, and, like, she was actually starting to feel hopeful, like, I guess through all the combat training and winning her fights and whatever, and, like, getting into a groove, like, she was actually starting to believe that maybe she could do this. And now she's reached an obstacle that she literally can't overcome, and she's starting to feel dejected. So, like, she had hope, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
So he understands. He says, like, I understand why you're feeling. And he was like, I understand that you had a squad mate die, and now you're starting to think about running away to the scribes. So he knows that Dane has offered to help her escape. And she's sort of, like, shocked that he knows that.
He knows everything.
Yeah, but, like,
there's more to his shadow power. There's more to it.
I mean, like, he's got shadows that can creep around and listen in on everything. So, like, why is she surprised?
Yeah.
I think the bigger question here is, why were his shadows following her?
All the time? What?
Anyway, so he says that, like, people die here. That's not up for debate. But it's what you do after they die that make you a rider. And he also says that she is the scale he judges himself on, whether or not he's a good person. And I'm just like, you guys have spoken, like, twice.
Yeah.
And he also tells her that if she's too short to do the task the way everyone else does it, the right way is not the only way. Yeah. Now, I will say that, like, I wish he had been a little, like, if he really cared, and now maybe it was, like, his way of being, like, I don't know. Part of me wishes that he gave her a little bit more than that, because her initial reaction is, what the hell am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
Right? So
I think she still needs to figure it out on her own, though.
I guess,
like, that's part of the... But it's just to show the difference. Every book is just about the differences between the shitty guy and the good guy. But it's literally just a moment to be like, this is what he suggested. Let's look at later on this week when we hear what actually happened and who freaked the fuck out. Yeah.
And then on top of that, too, so, like, obviously we're talking about the differences between Dane and Xaden. So, like, Dane literally, every time they see each other, it seems like he's, like, run away. You can't do it, so run away. I'll help you. I can't watch you die. Whereas Xaden is like, you can do it. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, he's encouraging as opposed to, I don't want to say berating, but like.
And like, you kind of understand, like, Dane is trying to come from a place of love, but he's also just so, like, it's just so rude and so shitty that, like, he's just getting her down. And you're like, why can't you just chill?
So over the next couple of weeks, they practice on the gauntlet, but she still can't scale the last 2 obstacles. Like, she still can't do it every single day. She always gets stuck on the chimney. So they have one day. It's presentation day / gauntlet day. So it's apparently this is the deadliest day for recruits because it's both things in one.
Yeah.
So the day arrives, and Dane is pissed at Violet for not sneaking into the scribe quadrant. Like, he's pissed at her.
Yeah.
Because he's like, it's too late now. Like, you have to go through the gauntlet. Like I said before, you either climb it or you die. So, like, if she didn't go, she's done. Like, she can't. It's all over.
She's gonna die today, basically.
Yeah, essentially, yes. He's like, you're gonna die.
I did everything I could, and now you die.
Yeah. So, as they're all, like, walking to go to the gauntlet, he tells her to change, her, mind. Like, he is firm, because she's like, dude, I'm gonna do it. And he's like, no, don't do it. Change your fucking mind. He doesn't say that. I'm making a point and saying that's how he feels.
Yeah.
And he says, like, he doesn't want to bury her. And he is convinced that that's what's going to happen.
To be fair, she's never completed the gauntlet before.
But, like,
like, I get it.
But she is also a fucking adult. She has agency. Like,
oh, for sure. Like completely agree
this
there.
This is her decision. It is not his decision.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't get to guilt her into making a different choice.
No, but I do understand that he's like, she is going to die because she's never done this before, and now it's either do it or die. So after 9 tries of not being able to do it, odds aren't really in her favor that she's just going to magically be able to do it today.
Good point. Anyway, this part, I fume. I almost threw the book. I was so mad at this next bit. So she tells him that she can't run to the scribes any more than he can. And he says, that's different. And she's like, well, why is it different? And he says, because I'm a rider. And I got so angry. I was fuming.
Yeah.
Fuming. Like, could they make a person more dislikable?
Right? I feel like they probably should have made him a bit more likable.
I don't know. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with hating him as much as I do.
But for the twist in the book, I'm like, they should have at least made him a bit more likable.
Maybe.
But I hate him.
Yeah. Anyway, so he says that he can't watch her die. So her response to him, which I love, is, well, then close your eyes. And then he asks, like, what's changed between the parapet and now? Because I guess maybe she was a little bit more open to escaping to the scribes in the first, but she wasn't, like, but he thinks she was. Like, I think maybe it had to do with the fact that he was like, let's sneak you over, and her response was that her mother would find out and haul her back. Yeah. So, like, maybe he took that as a, well, I would, except for my mom. So then he found a solution to that the leader of the scribes, Professor Markham, wouldn't tell her mom. That solves the issue. And then by then she had changed. So he's like, what's changed? And her response is, me.
Love it.
I also love it. So cut to Violet climbing up the gauntlet. So she's like, she managed to get through all the other obstacles. She's on the chimney, And she actually uses the nearby rope as leverage to climb up the chimney with her feet. So the thing that's supposed to save you if you fall, it's a 30-second penalty for her to touch it, but it doesn't specifically say you can't use it.
Yeah. So it's a way around.
Yeah. So then she manages to get up, and then she has to climb up the ramp. So she runs at it, and she's never gotten a chance to try it before. So she runs at it, and she actually uses her dagger to stab the ramp and haul herself up. At the top, so there's 4 wing leaders, right? There's first, second, third, and fourth. Mm-hmm. The third wing leader calls her a cheater and tells her that she can't use foreign materials. She can, but like, it's like, well, she can use the rope. It's just a 30-second penalty. And Xaden, right.
So that part is fine.
Yes.
Like, she's not arguing that part. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's arguing that the foreign materials, aka the dagger that she used, she's technically not allowed to use. So Xaden is there, and like all the other wing leaders, and this wing leader, the third, her name is Amber Mavis. She tells Xaden that he can't allow lawlessness in his wing. But Violet actually quotes the codex. Apparently there's a rule that anything a rider carries across the parapet is considered a part of their person, and cannot be separated from them at all costs. So she says, technically, the dagger is not a foreign material. It's a part of me. So it's a technicality, but it still counts.
Yeah.
Because she did use the dagger she carried across, not one of the daggers she won during competition.
Yeah.
So, like, Amber stalks off. She's super pissed. And it's funny, she insults Violet and is like, oh, you think like a scribe. And it's like, well, yes, she was training for it her whole life. What do you expect?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Amber like stalks off, and Violet joins her squad mates. Her hands are like really badly injured, so they need to be all wrapped like they're really bloody. So their squad apparently placed 11th out of 36, and like Violet wasn't even the slowest person.
Period.
Period. Yeah. So
I think she was the slowest person in her squad.
Yes, but still. But I think she said like she was only like 2.5-ish minutes. Mm-hmm. Which is like still amazing.
Yeah.
And then we get right into presentation. So like gauntlet is over, presentation time. So
no time to worry about almost dying on the gauntlet.
Nope.
Just get your ass in front of some dragons.
Yes. So the squads are walking past the dragons so that the dragons can look at them, like I said at the beginning. Apparently everybody is like, oh my god, because there is a feather tail present. Which is wild, because nobody actually has seen a feather tail outside of the Vale. Feather tails, like, don't bond with dragons, or with people. Like, they've learned that in their, like, dragon class. Feather tails never bond. So they think it's probably just there to watch and just be curious about stuff. So they have to walk single file past the dragons. They have to be 7 feet apart from each other, in case the dragons think somebody is unworthy and then just lights them on fire. So this is another worry about presentation. If they think you're not worthy, they'll just scorch you.
Good.
And if you are too close to the person getting scorched, you will also be scorched and die. So Tynan is in front of her, and Rhiannon is behind her. So they're instructed to, like, talk to each other on, like, as they're presenting themselves, because the dragons will get a better sense of who they are. And I'm assuming the dragons can sort of like see inside of them a little bit to like judge their character.
Yeah, there has to be like some magical component to how they decide.
So her and Rhiannon chat about whether Rhiannon will have a new niece or nephew, because like we learned last week, her sister is preggo. And then they also talk about how she got up the gauntlet, and like Tynan is just being his irritating, annoying self every few minutes and just being an asshole. So they make it to the end of the first path, and that's where the feather tail is. So like apparently it's small, and bright yellow. And Tynan and Luca, who is like a bitchy girl, both say that it's too small to have a rider. And Tynan thinks that someone should kill it so it can't bond with anyone because it's so small, it's, like, useless. So, like, he's taking the strong, like, we need to, like, cull the weak for the good of the wing. He's taking that, like, into the dragons now. And they need to show the dragons, like, the utmost respect. And I'm sort of surprised, actually, that the dragons don't, like, toast him.
Just kill him immediately. Yeah.
Like, he is saying someone should kill it. Like, I feel like you would think that
the dragons would take offense to that.
Yeah. Anyway. So they turn around and they turn back in front of another line of dragons. And this time, Rhiannon is in front of her and Luca is behind her. So Violet tells them a story, I guess to, like, get their mind off things as they walk, tells them a story about wyverns. How they are like dragons, but they have 2 legs instead of 4. And they have razor-sharp feathers down their necks. And they carry venin riders. So venin are people who turn from channeling magic at the source instead of through dragons. Up ahead, I think we heard from this guy Pryor a little bit last week. He can't make up his mind about something. So a red dragon incinerates him.
Yeah, no big deal.
So he's dead now. So that's another person off their squad. Then, as they're walking, a couple of dragons actually, like, get really up close to Violet and, like, sniff her and, like, they bump her. And they're, like, sniffing at her hand and her vest. And initially she's, like, terrified, but then she, like, talks to them. And she realizes that they smell her sister's dragon, Tane, who was also a green dragon. So they smell, like, I guess a sibling, a family member, like someone in their tribe. I don't know. So they smell that dragon on her because she's wearing the dragon scale armor. So she actually tells them what it is, and this causes them to, okay, like, they accept that and they back up. And whatever. So Luca is being insufferable and, like, ragging on Pryor even though he's already dead. So the dragons incinerate her too.
Yeah.
And then that knocks them down to having only 6 first years in their squad. So that's the end of presentation. Then, like, this book goes, like, bang, 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 bang. Like, there is no unessential information. And I feel like we say that about books a lot. But in this case, like, we went from gauntlet to presentation, and now it's Threshing Day already.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Threshing Day is Dragon Day. It's the day that the first years that don't have dragons have the chance to bond with a dragon. And it's October 1st. And it's October. So, like,
yay! Spooky season.
Yeah, let's pretend we have our dragons.
Yeah.
So they are listening to Professor Kaori. She is telling them to listen to their intuition. So if it's telling you to go a certain way, go that way. Because that's probably, like, the magic of, like, your bond.
Like a draw. Yeah, they have, like, a draw to each other.
Yeah.
It seems like.
So, yeah, she's saying, if your intuition is telling you to go a certain way, go that way. And Violet, like, I guess they're sort of saying, like, they've introduced all the dragons that are going to be at the threshing. So, like, if you want a certain one, you need to go look for that one.
Yeah.
Right? So, Violet's sort of, like, she doesn't know who to go for. Like, she doesn't know, like, she said she studied the cards, but she doesn't really feel connected to any of them. Which is sort of a hint maybe she's not going to get a dragon, right?
Yeah. Very easily could happen.
Yeah. So, apparently she's barely spoken to Dane.
Good.
Except He came to her and begged her to leave this morning.
Of course he did.
Like a broken record, dude. Jack Barlow runs his fingers across his neck at her, so she is like convinced that him and Tynan and Oren are gonna come for her because Threshing is like open season for cadets too. Like if they want to kill each other, they are allowed and nobody is allowed to step in. So like it's a prime time for them to come after her.
Yeah.
So they're in the field. It's a couple of hours into Threshing. Violet has come across dragons, but she hasn't bonded with any of them. So she decides to climb a tree and see, like, who's around. And she actually sees the little golden feather tail in the clearing. And she's like, oh, like, I guess it's just here to see what's what.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
Yeah. And then,
that makes sense.
Yeah. I know, it's like, come on. And I will be honest with you, when I first read through this, like, spoiler alert, I was like, oh, obviously her and the little feathertail are gonna bond.
Yeah.
That was like, That was the given. I was like, oh, the feathertail is small and it's gonna be a story of how they're small, they're both small, but they're both mighty.
Yeah. Like, I didn't realize how small the feathertail was. Like, I thought that she could ride on the feathertail.
Yes.
She's also smaller than a normal rider.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So I was like, oh, this is it. Like, she's gonna bond that feathertail. Yeah. So she sees the feathertail in the clearing, and I'm like, yes, go to her. Or him. Whatever. And then she sees Jack, Tynan, and Oren below, and hears them talking about the feathertail. So apparently they think the feathertail is a weakness because it's so small. And feathertails also refuse to fight. Like, they're not aggressive in any way. So they're like, oh, well, if somebody bonds with it, then that'll hurt the wing, so we have to kill it. So they're planning to hunt it down and kill it, but I don't think they know where it is.
Yeah. And, like, we already knew that Tynan wanted to kill it anyway, so it's not surprising that he's dragged his buddies into it.
Yeah. Violet thinks that this is, like, atrocious. Obviously, they can't kill it, and she can't let them kill it. So she races down the tree and, like, just boots it for the clearing to warn it and to, like, have it leave. But obviously on the way, she trips in a tree root and she sprains her ankle because why the hell not?
Yeah, that can't make anything easier.
No. So she approaches the feathertail and tries to get it to fly away, but like it doesn't even move. And the three guys approach and Violet stands in between them and she's trying to convince them not to do this. Like, they can't kill a dragon. Like, that's against their beliefs.
It's also really dumb. Like, obviously the other dragons are gonna be pissed if you kill a dragon. Like, they're the...
Yeah. And I'm actually very surprised that other dragons don't, like, step in for this.
I know. It's wild.
Like, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
So they raise their swords and they're about to fight when someone speaks behind them. It's Xaden and his, like, terrifying, blue dragon. What'd you say? Seagale?
Segale? Yeah.
Seagale? Segale.
So it's kind of like what you were saying.
I was saying Scale.
Yeah, so it's just a longer S.
Segale.
Yeah.
Okay.
I recently listened to the audiobook of certain parts, so that's the only reason why.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay, so Segale. And he's just saying, like, he strongly suggests, like, that they rethink their actions. Like, don't do this. But, like, they're all like, dude, we know that you can't interfere. Like, you are not allowed to interfere with us. It's against the rules.
But I'm also like, yeah, it's against the rules. But if they're literally going to kill a dragon, wouldn't the dragons be okay if he interfered? You know what I mean? Like, nothing to do with her, nothing to do with...
But I think it's a school rule. I don't think it's a dragon rule.
Maybe.
Like, I think it's a school rule that no one's allowed to interfere.
I guess.
But so my thing is, like, Xaden can't interfere. He's only allowed to observe. But, like, can his dragon interfere? Because, like, this is the thing. Like, the humans have no control over the dragons at all. Like, the dragons are they're a superior race, and the humans just have to go along with whatever the dragons say and do. Like, they cannot control them whatsoever. So, like, so if Sigale did step in, what is the school gonna do?
Well, yeah, because, like, if Sigale just blew them all up with her fire, why is that any different than, like, any other dragon doing that?
Yeah. Anyway, so, but, I mean, I assume that maybe the dragons also make the same... I'm assuming the dragons make the same sort of, like, assertion. Like, yeah, we won't interfere. I don't know.
I get it. But I'm also like, what we find out about the Feathertail later on, you'd think all rules are, like...
out the window.
Off. All bets are off. It doesn't matter. And also,
but
like...
the humans don't know that fact.
I know, but who would know that she stepped in?
Oh, Sigale.
Like, yeah, who would... who would know?
But I'm assuming they must have people watching from above.
But then, like, you'd think someone would be like, Xaden, why did you step forward? I know that hasn't happened yet, but it's just like, I don't know. It's just so weird that the dragons are letting this happen at all. I'm like, there should have been someone with the Feathertail anyway, a dragon. Even if they are looking to bond, somebody should have been like, I'll watch them.
Yeah, I also don't understand why it didn't fly away when Violet was like,
well, yeah.
Bitch, go.
Yeah.
Like, and dragons understand English. Like, they understand the conversation. So, like, the Feathertail heard them talking about how they're gonna kill it. And she's like, do. Like, I'm just gonna stay here.
Like, it's obviously a test. But it just seems like if there's actually a chance that they could kill it, somebody should have done something.
Yeah. Anyway, besides the point.
Yeah.
They attack anyway. They're like, Xaden can't do anything, so they're going to attack. So Violet actually throws a dagger at Jack and gets him right at a very specific part of the shoulder that, like, makes it so they can't feel it. So the other two, like, run for her, and she manages to get Tynan in the thigh, and Orin goes for her stomach, but because of the armor she's wearing, it obviously doesn't slice. So obviously Jack, again, like I said, he can't feel his shoulder. She got it right in a specific part of the nerves and joints. So he yells, "Kill her!" And then he runs away. So, like, he's a really good guy.
He is being cowardly here.
Yes.
And, like, I only say that because, like, obviously, I think I would run away too. Like, I don't think I'd be in this situation.
Yeah, but I don't think he would try and kill a dragon anyway.
No, exactly. But, like, it's not what I kind of expected. Because he's all, like, the big bad guy, and the first time he's injured, he's like, well, now I'm going to run away. I was like, I don't know. I didn't think that was going to be a part of his character, but, like, I get... Yeah. He's shitty, so he has to also be... It just... I don't know. It was kind of interesting, I guess.
I feel you. So she attacks the other two, and she's like, oh, good, it's now 2-on-1 instead of 3-on-1. And she's, like, swiping at them and getting... She did get Tynan in the gut. Like, she got a really good gut shot. But, like... And his, like, intestines are, like, falling. He has to hold himself together. But he actually gets her in the arm, almost to the bone. Like, he gave her a really good slice.
Yeah, I think it goes through her arm, doesn't it? Because she has to get stitches on both sides. It's, like, gross.
So, I guess, like, you know, again, she got a sprained ankle. Her arm is, like, really, really hurt. So, they're getting the upper hand. Orin is about to decapitate her. And Xaden, like, yells, like, a warning. He's like, look out! Or, like, on your left! Or whatever. And then the Feathertail actually steps in and bites at Orin. I don't know if it gets anything, or if just, like, snaps at him.
I kind of doubt it, but that's just an assumption based on nothing.
Yeah. So that, like, startles him. He's like, oh shit, because, like, she does have teeth.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
she's not completely defenseless.
No.
Like, I don't understand why they thought they could kill a dragon.
Yeah. But I don't think she has any fire. I don't think.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have any claws. She's got cute little paddy paws.
Yeah.
So this startles him, Orin, so that Violet can knock him unconscious with her with her blade, like her blade handle. She like hits him in the head, and he's down for the count.
Mhm.
And like she's really confused why like Xaden warned her, because this entire time she's like, "Oh look, he's here to watch me die because he wants me to die."
Of course.
So she's like, "Why is he like calling out to warn me about stuff?" And so, like, Tynan is coming for her, and he's, like, going to strike at her, and she's apparently, like, bleeding too much from her arm, and, like, she's just I guess, a little overcome, so she can't hit him with the daggers. And she sees Xaden then take a step forward, as if to help, like, even though it's against the rules.
We all know rules.
Yes.
It's what we live by.
Yes. So Xaden like steps forward, but then she feels this gust of wind behind her, and it is so strong it nearly knocks her over. And like Tynan looks terrified and backs up, and she like turns around to see this huge black dragon. It's the one that Professor Kaori showed them, but said this dragon is not going to be at Threshing. This dragon is not looking for a rider.
Yeah.
It's the one that Jack Barlow wanted, and she was like, that dragon has decided not to bond with anybody this year.
And its rider tried to save her brother, and that's how its rider died.
Yeah. So it's landed protecting the little golden feathertail. And, like, apparently it's so big that Violet doesn't even reach its ankle. Which is amazing. Like, think about how big that is.
Yeah. It's wild.
That's ginormous. So it speaks in her mind to step aside and calls her Silver One, because she does have those silver tips.
Mm-hmm.
And then she does. And it just incinerates Tynan. Thank God.
Fair.
And then it tells her to kill the one at her feet, aka Orin. But she says no, like, I can't kill somebody who's unconscious. And the dragon's like, he would kill you if he had the chance. And she says,
if this was reversed and she was unconscious.
Yes, he would kill her. And she says, but that's a reflection on his character, not hers.
I love it.
I love it too. So the golden dragon flies away at this point, and she's just like, okay, sure, great, bye. Like,
you could have flown this whole time, and now.
Yeah. So Xaden and Sigale also fly away at this point, and the black dragon tells Violet to get on his back, but she obviously can't because he's so big, and like she also has a hurt ankle, so like it's sort of not helping. Mm-hmm. And then she realizes that this means that the dragon is choosing her. And she tries to tell him that he shouldn't choose her. Like, and he won't take no for an answer. He says, like, get up. And he says, like, before you make us look foolish. He
just love it. I love them all.
So he makes his front leg sort of a ramp for her to climb up, which is like shocking because apparently dragons don't like supplicate or bow or like they don't help. Like you need to be strong enough to deal with the dragon. Like they do not bow for you.
That's the whole point of all of this training.
Yeah. So she does climb up, but he's so huge, like she doesn't see any way for her to stay on because he's so broad. Like they're supposed to use their leg muscles to like grip the like the sides of the dragon's neck, I guess, like right at the base of their neck and shoulders. But like he's so wide, there's no way for her to do that, and she's sort of weak in the muscles and ligaments anyway. So she doesn't see any way for her to stay on. But he tells her his name is Ternanak, son of Mert Kudim and Fia Clanfuil. Or
Good job.
Tairn for short.
Good. I know. I was reading this book and I was like, oh my god, am I going to have to remember his name? This is wild.
Yeah.
But Taryn for short.
Yeah.
Cool.
So they start to fly and Tairn is flying up, like almost vertically, which makes Violet slide down his back and off. And like she is falling and like in midair falling. But he does manage to grab her with his claws and tells her again, stop making them look bad.
I just love him so much.
And she's shocked again because she's like, dragons don't save their riders. Like, if they fall, and they'll just go pick somebody else.
Yeah. Especially on, like, Threshing Day.
Yeah.
Like, why not?
So he then, like, uses his legs to fling her up and catches her on his back again. And he tells her she's going to have to strengthen her legs. But for now, he actually wraps his magic around her to stay on. And he says, like, we have to put on a good show. So he does some, like, acrobatics, some loop-de-loops, before they head to the training grounds. So the golden dragon is close by and actually follows them. And she asks Tairn, like, why he chose her, considering who she is. And he says, like, it's because she saved the golden dragon, even though, he says it's because she saved, like, the golden yellow feather-tailed dragon. And she's like, but I thought that dragons value strength and ferocity and cunning. But he tells her, like, that she is the smartest in her year, the most cunning. And valid point, like, she is, she's coming up with alternative ways to get through the obstacles, even though her size won't let her, like, do them the traditional way. So, like, I agree. She's the smartest in her year. And her name is not Hermione.
Yeah.
So she's the most cunning. And she still defended the smallest dragon with ferocity. And apparently so the dragon says her strength of courage is more important than her physical strength.
Yeah.
So he's saying all of this inside her head, and she can respond in kind. So they chat, like, dragons can talk to each other through, like, a mind link. But he can read all of her thoughts.
It's so weird.
But she can't read all of his thoughts.
No.
So they land, and the golden dragon lands beside them, the Feathertail. And she manages to, like, shimmy down Tairn with, like, a whole bunch of effort. And, like, I guess, like, they want to save face in front of it because everybody is there. Like, they're landing on the training grounds where everybody else was to watch, right? All the older cadets, like, her mom is there. Like, everyone's there watching who pairs up with who. So she wants to, like, save face a little bit and be like, well, I can't have him bow down now in front of everybody. So she does manage to get down. And then she speaks to the golden dragon and says she's glad she's okay, but next time, fly off the next time someone is trying to kill you.
Fair.
Like, save yourself. So the golden dragon then responds through, like, her head and speaks into her head that maybe she, the golden dragon, was saving Violet. And Violet is shocked and is like, because dragons are not supposed to talk to anybody who is not their rider. And dragons are very strict about that rule. So Violet says, like, you shouldn't do that. Like, you shouldn't talk to me anymore. Like, in a nice way, not in a, don't talk to me. But in a, hey, like, you know, you're not really supposed to talk to me like that. Like, you know, trying to help.
You're not, like, Tairn chose me.
Yeah.
You really shouldn't
do that. So Violet has to, like, approach a desk with a roll keeper who keeps track of all the bonds. And she has to tell the roll keeper Tairn's full name because that's the only way to know for sure that the dragon has picked her. And only the rider knows the dragon's full name. And the roll keeper, obviously. So her mother is there, and, like, she says that she can see from her mom's face that she can't believe that Violet is with Tairn. And, like, is like waiting with bated breath for her to say Taryn's full name because she's like, maybe this is a mistake. And this pisses Violet off because her mom is the one who forced her into this program, but obviously she only cares about how her flaws may tarnish her mother's reputation. And, like, her mom isn't even looking at her to be like, are you okay? Like, you know, like, with any sort of emotion or concern. She's just staring at Taryn. So she does approach the desk, and she gives Taryn's full name. And the scribe is, like, amazed, because this guy's a legend of a dragon. Like, he's revered. Yeah. And then Violet hears the sweet high sound of the golden dragon telling her name, which is Andarna, or Andarna for short. So Violet sort of doesn't know what to do, because she's like, I already gave Taryn's name.
Yeah.
So, like, but she insists. She's like, tell them my name. And Taryn's like, do it. So she does, which shocks everyone.
All hell breaks loose.
All hell breaks loose. Because nobody bonds with two dragons.
Especially not the weakest of the year. So we kind of jump a little bit of time. Violet goes to the medical tent, and the generals are still, like, losing their mind over her two dragons, and, like, discussing it and saying, like, it's impossible, you can't have two dragons. Yeah. But, like, the roll keeper is just back to, like, taking the rolls as people come in. She ends up getting both sides of her arm sewed up, and Professor Kaori is splinting up her ankle. So Professor Kaori is the one that taught them about all of the dragons. I can't remember what the class is called. Is it just about dragons?
I guess. Like dragon, I don't know. Dragon identification?
101. So they're just chatting, and she asks him, the professor, like, who else in her squad has made it out. He says he hasn't seen Trina or Tynan. But Violet just says, like, Tynan isn't coming back. And throughout all of this, Taryn is in her head because they have a bond. And Taryn just says to her, like, that isn't her kill to take credit for. Because she does feel a bit guilty. Jack is also nearby because he is getting his shoulder fixed up. And the healer says that it's not even a healer.
No.
It's just
a medic.
It's riders. Like, there's just riders there because you're not allowed up in this spot unless you are a rider.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, the person that's helping him out, that's why there's a professor helping her and not a healer. Anyway, the person that's helping Jack says that he's likely going to have surgery to fix his shoulder. Anyway, and Violet also knows that he bonded an orange scorpion tail, which, like we said, is super interesting because, like, he tried to kill a dragon and a dragon still bonded him.
Yeah.
Violet looks at him and she just smiles and she thinks she's, like, done being afraid of him. He ran away from her.
Yeah.
So she's just done, and I fucking love it. So Jack comes over and is super pissed, but the professor, like, steps between them, and Jack is like, what are you doing? Like, hiding behind a professor, and the professor says, no, you should back off, because her dragon, Taryn, looks super angry. And he's like, he's liable to kill you. Right? And Jack is, like, shocked that she got the black, more powerful dragon. And it's, like, the most powerful dragon of their year. And then he says, I don't know what she told you about what happened. But he's just like, she didn't tell me anything. Like, what are you talking about? And Violet's just like, everyone who needs to know knows. Like, go away, basically.
Yeah, essentially, he's like, he really thinks she's going to spread it around that he ran. And he's thinking he has to do damage control.
But also that he tried to kill a dragon. Like, this is a big deal. Like, nobody is taking this as big as I need them to.
But also, like, she should be telling people that. But I also feel like it might end up being like a he said, she said sort of thing.
Yeah. It turns out fine anyway, I guess. But yeah, he basically just leaves. But Violet asks Kaori if anyone's ever bonded two dragons, but he says no. And he's kind of like, he doesn't know why the generals are even arguing over it, because it's going to be up to the dragons if she can have two bonds or not. Like, it's not up to people.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even know why they're bothering.
Well, like I said, remember, like, the people have no control over what the dragons do. So, like, this whole two dragon bond thing, humans don't get a say.
Yeah. But they're still arguing, of course, because that's what they do. But Violet does start to kind of think, like, they might make her choose between them. Which would be sad. But she goes back over to them, and Taryn tells her it's actually up to the Empyrean, which is the name of the series of books. Yeah. But the Imperium is just the Dragon Council or something. Whatever. I probably should have looked up what Empyrean means, because I think it actually is a real word. Anyway, Coda, who is General Melgren's dragon, he's the only other black dragon, leads all of the dragons away, and they all go off to have their little chat. Like, even Andarna goes with them. Everybody goes. But before Taryn goes, he tells her to stay with the wing leader, and she thinks in her head, oh, he must mean the squad leader. But he says no. And then, obviously, he means the wing leader.
It's like stay with the High Lord.
Yeah, but it was the wrong one. I love it. But then Coda and Taryn kind of like growl at each other, and Andarna tells her it is about her. Yikes. And then the dragons leave. So she's like, shit, this is going to be a fight for them too. Yeah. Rhiannon and Riddick run over to her, and they're all super excited that they're alive, of course. And they all bonded a dragon. So Rhiannon bonded a green dagger tail. So it was actually one of the greens that was smelling Violet's vest at the procession. And Riddick bonded a brown sword tail. And then Sawyer comes up, and he bonded a red sword tail. And we're all super happy for Sawyer because it's his second time doing first year. Yeah. And, like, I'm just so happy for him. Violet then asks if they know if Trina made it out. Because, like, obviously they're wondering who in their squad is still alive. Yeah. But Sawyer says that he saw her fall off of an orange dragon. And I think Violet actually saw that happen, and the dragon didn't catch her, so she just died. Yeah. We don't know if that dragon went back and bonded anyone or not, or if it just was like, nope. Yeah, it's not the same one that Jack got. I just was wondering that. But he got a scorpion tail. I guess it could be. We don't actually know. Anyway, maybe it's the same one. Maybe it went back and was like, I'll take this kid. Yeah. They then ask about Tynan, but Violet says that Taryn killed him after he stabbed her, and then tried to... But then Dane shows up, and he hugs her and says he tried what? Because obviously, like, inter-squad stabbing is not great.
I mean, really. It doesn't really matter. He's dead anyway.
Well, exactly. Now it doesn't matter, but he really shouldn't have done that, probably not, you know. So Dane just asks her to chat, and she first thinks like he must be taking her to her mother, which is just kind of interesting because she's really worried about like what her mother is thinking about her and like all of this like what her mother thinks is going to happen and that kind of stuff. And like her mother just doesn't, not that she doesn't give a fuck, but she's just like completely ignoring her. Yeah. Which, like, I know she said she was going to, but, like, this isn't normal. Bonding two dragons isn't normal. You'd think her mother would be like, what the fuck happened? Or even ask her, like, what's going on? Yeah. It's just, it is a bit weird. But anyway, that's not it. He's taking her to chat. And he takes her over into the shadows. And on her walk over, she, like, locks eyes with Xaden for, like, a minute. So... You're like, obviously Xaden is going to be able to hear this. He controls shadows. Yeah. But, like, they don't even think about that.
Nope. And I'm sort of okay with it. Like, Does Dane know, like, does everybody know that Xaden's a shadow master?
No. I don't think Dane knows, but, like, Violet does.
Yeah. But, like, I guess Violet doesn't care if he hears.
Probably, I guess. But it's just kind of funny. So Dane just brings her over and asks her what the fuck is going on, because his dragon, Kath, told him that not only did Taryn choose her, but so did the small one, and she's going to have to choose. And she kind of, like, starts arguing with him, because, like, it isn't his job to tell her that she's going to have to choose. Like, the professor of dragons just told her it's up to the dragons. So, like, why is he coming over and saying this? Like, it's none of his business, really. No. But he tells her that she has to choose Andarna because she likely can't carry a rider, so she'll be safer and she won't be on the front lines. And, right? Violet is, like, shocked at this because she's like, you can't tell me that I need to choose the dragon because I won't be able to ride it. Like, that's the whole point of this dragon rider thing. Like, what the fuck?
His whole thing is what will keep her the safest.
100%. And she's like, I just bonded the strongest dragon of this fucking year, and you're telling me that I need to pick the other one because it'll keep me safer? Yeah. And she doesn't really say it like that, because she then starts to think about, like, shit, if she does have to choose, she doesn't know what she's going to do, because, like, obviously you can't say no to Taryn. He would kill her. Probably, likely. Based on how dragons act, you'd think. Mm-hmm. But she can't say no to Andarna because, like, she's sweet and cute and, like, a little baby. So she wouldn't want, like, it would break her heart to say no to Andarna, too. Yeah. So she's like, shit. And she starts to obviously worry that she's going to have to choose. So she tries to ask Taryn and Andarna through her link, but the bond is, like, not working at the moment. Dane, like, keeps arguing, and then he says, like, if she chooses Taryn, Xaden is ruthless and he will get her killed. And she doesn't know what she's getting into. And she's like, wait, what does this have to do with Xaden?
Like, why are you bringing him up at all? Like, it's Xaden's last year, so, like, the chances of, like, in her mind right now, like, after this year, like, he's gone. He'll be sent to a squad, like, in the army, like, to a whatever, like, they won't.
They're never gonna see each other. It's really confusing the way it's brought. Like, you're like, wait, how is everything coming back to Xaden? Yeah. But he tells her that Taryn and Segal are a mated pair, and they have the strongest mated bond of dragons in centuries.
Oh, so, woo!
That's something for sure that is important. Yeah. But obviously Violet knows a lot of shit, so she thinks to what she knows on mated pairs, and they can't be separated for long or their health diminishes. So, like, if her and Taryn are bonded, then
she's gonna see
she's
Xaden.
Stuck with Xaden.
Yeah, she's gonna be with Xaden all the time. And it's like, ooh, all the time, man.
Yeah. Interesting. Yes. But obviously she's like, oh no, he wants to me. This is shitty. Yes. And Dane's like, obviously Dane thinks the same. Yeah. So, like, you know. Anyway. So Dane then asks her, like, how it all happened. And she does, like, she tells him the story. And she says that Xaden was there, and he cuts in and is like, what? Why was he there? And she's like, yeah, he was there until Taryn showed up. And he's like, don't you see what he's done? And she's like, no. And then Xaden shows up and says, please tell me what you think I've done.
Yes!
And you're like, yay! But Dane says that Xaden manipulated Threshing. And Violet's like, shit, you can't say that a wing leader did that. You're just like a squad leader. What the fuck are you doing? But she also tells him that he's being paranoid, which I just love. But Xaden's like, is this an actual accusation? And Dane asks if he stepped in. And Xaden says, like, she was outnumbered and she was wounded and she was fighting and it was as admirable as it was reckless. And Violet's just like, she cuts in and she's like, I would do it again. And Xaden, like, kind of loses it for a second and he says, well, the fuck aware. And I'm like, I love it.
But, like, it's just cute because he also wants to protect her, but, like, he knows that she is, like, decently capable.
Yeah, and, like, he like, she's her own person.
Yeah.
And, like, he knows that she would always protect,
yes,
like, somebody who needs help, basically. Like, he knows her so well in such a short period of time, and, I just love it. I love it. But then Xaden says that Dane is asking the wrong question, and he says, Sigale was there too, and she saw it all, and she's the one that told Taryn. It wasn't even because, like, him or his dragon didn't want Violet to die. It was because Sigale is fond of the little dragon, so she called Taryn to come over just to kill the guys so that they couldn't kill the dragon. She didn't really care about Violet at all.
Yeah.
And then Taryn is the one that decided that he wanted to bond with Violet.
Right.
And, like, we're getting this. I don't know how much of this is true. I kind of think that Xaden didn't want Violet to die either. So, like, you know, I think Sigale was kind of like, Sigale. Gal pals. I think Sigale was kind of, like, hearing that Xaden was freaking out.
Yeah,
but I think he's just keeping that part quiet.
Oh,
you know.
for sure.
But then Dane just says, fuck. And Xaden agrees. And he says that Violet is the last person on the continent that he wants to be chained to. Which is so shitty.
But, like, is it? Is she?
I know.
Is it just because you want to jump her bones?
Right. But it is obviously super shitty. Like, he's graduating and she's still going to be in school. Like, the logistics of this mated pair is not great.
Yeah.
But
throws a wrench in a lot.
Yes. But then Xaden also counters to Dane. He's like, isn't her being alive all that matters? And Dane just says, like, there are rules. So Xaden flat out asks if Dane would have broken the rules to save her. And he hesitates. And Xaden orders him to answer.
As the wing leader.
Yeah, because he's higher in command. And orders are very important to Dane.
Yeah.
Same as rules. And Dane says it would have killed him to watch something happen to her, but the rules. And then he kind of, like, just stops talking and she's like, I get it. And you're like,
yeah,
he's a piece of shit.
Yeah. Like, can you imagine somebody being like, oh, I don't want you to die, but I also don't want to break the rules here. Yeah. Like, it's wild.
Yeah. And, like, Violet is, like, it kind of breaks something in Violet's heart that he admits this. Like, she kind of knew it, but, like, for him to actually admit it is, like, obviously hurtful.
Yeah.
He would have just watched her die. Yeah.
It's like, sorry, obviously. I wouldn't save you because I'm a rule follower.
Yeah, that rules are all that matter to me. And then Xaden basically tells Dane to, like, go the fuck away. And Violet is just pissed, and she yells at Xaden and asks, like, why he did that. And then she just, like, walks away from him, but he catches up to her, and he says that she puts too much faith in Dane, and knowing who to trust is the only thing that's going to keep her alive. And then he says, keep us alive. And he says not only in the quadrant, obviously, but also after graduation. And she just kind of latches on, and she says, there is no us. But Xaden says not anymore. He tells her, like, Taryn's bonds are very powerful, and after losing his last rider, he almost died, which in turn almost killed Sigale, and apparently with dragons, each new bond is stronger than the last one, so, like, her bond with Taryn will likely be super strong, and then if she dies, Taryn dies, Sigale dies,
Xaden dies.
Xaden dies. Yeah. So...
because technically they say that a dragon can survive if a rider dies, but a rider cannot survive if their dragon dies. So technically Taryn could survive if Violet died, but because their bond is so strong, he'd likely not.
Yeah. And if he were to die, it would likely kill Sigale because they are mates.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know for sure, obviously, but more than likely.
Yeah.
So it's
all of their lives now.
It's so crazy, though, that, like, killing one of them or one of their dragons would take out the lot of them.
Well, and then
like,
we haven't even put Andarna into the mix.
Yeah. But it's also,
if Andarna dies, her and Violet have a bond. So if Andarna dies, then Violet dies, then Taryn dies, then Sigale dies, then Xaden dies. So, like, this is a very, it's a web.
But it's so, like, this is a thing that's obviously going to be the main focus, or a main focus in the coming books. But, like, if somebody wants to kill Xaden, they just have to kill Violet or Andarna.
Yeah.
And then they're all gone. Yeah. Every single one of them.
Yeah, it's amazing in a bad way.
It's going to be so fucked in the coming books. Yeah. Like, it's got to be a huge plot point. Anyway. But then, obviously, Xaden doesn't get into that as much as we just did, probably. But he says, now that Taryn's in play, any of the unbonded candidates will be after her to try and bond with him. So, like, technically, the unbonded candidates can try to kill a bonded candidate and then try to try to bond with their dragon.
No
Sorry.
Mating.
No mating. This is not Shrek 2. Or was it the first one? I can't remember.
With the donkey and the dragon. That's weird.
Yeah. Anyway. So in previous years, like, unbonded candidates have killed bonded candidates and then bonded with their dragons. So, right now, because Taryn is the most powerful dragon, like, and because their bond is the most vulnerable it'll ever be, because it's weak, because it just started. She's going to be target number 1, because everyone's going to want her dragon.
Yeah.
And then he's like, you are freakishly calm. But she's just like, knowing that everyone is after her is a lot less intimidating than watching dark corners for him. Because now he's on her side. Just to keep himself alive, according to her. Yeah. But I love it. It's so dumb, but I love it.
Yeah.
Then Xaden walks away, obviously, over to Sigale, because, like, the dragons are starting to come back. And she walks over to Taryn and Andarna. And Taryn tells her it's how it should be. And you're like, what the fuck does that mean? But General Milgreen speaks to everyone and says the dragons have decided to let her keep 2 dragons since there's no actual law against it. And then he says, while some riders may not agree with it, the dragons have their own laws. Yay. So you're like, ooh, he obviously doesn't agree with it either. And I'm sure that'll never come up as an issue. Obviously, Violet is pumped that she doesn't have to choose between them. And she gets to keep both of them. And she thinks, like, she belongs to Taryn and Andarna, and in a fucked up way to Xaden, too.
Oh.
And I'm like, belongs to? Ooh. The feminist just left my body.
Yes. Yeah, it's true.
Only in books.
Only in books. Yeah. I know, it's true, though, how, like, I am very much a, like, you know, women can do it if men can do it, like, you know, equal treatment all the time, like, you know, but in books, it does.
Belongs to.
It's true. It just, like, sometimes it just floats away in certain moments, and this is one of those moments.
Yeah. So she looks over at Xaden at that, and he just holds up one finger to her, because she's target number 1.
Oh, yeah.
And then her mother basically does, like, the closing things, and then they tell all the new riders to step forward, and they're all just like, what? But they all step forward, and then she feels a dragon's breath behind her. And I'm pretty sure she says it hurts. Do you remember if she says that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
So it's her getting her relic, and all of the riders are now from their dragons. But it just makes me think of the Rebels kids getting relics and it being painful, because some of them were actual babies.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, that is so shitty.
Yeah.
Like, we obviously knew it was shitty, but it's even more shitty that it was painful. And they were all kids. Like, Xaden is the oldest of them. They were all young children.
Yeah. So they all have these awesome, like, almost like tattoos now. And it's like, it's like the dragon's stamp. Like, so each one is different.
Yeah, and in a different place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it lets you see, like, okay, whose rider are you? Like, which dragon owns you?
Yeah. So Dane comes up to her, and he's so happy she gets to keep both dragons, and you're like, really?
I know, it's like a whiplash. He went from like, you need to pick Andarna, and now it's like, oh, you get to keep both. I'm so happy for you. And it's like, are you?
I was like, whoa, what?
Like, I feel like this is an optics thing. Like, he's acting in front of...
Yes.
Right? Like...
I think so, too. Yeah. But then he asks if he can, like, pull her shirt down to see her relic, because it's, like, peeking up in, like, the back of her neck, I guess. And then he says, it's beautiful, and Taryn tells Violet to tell him to move. And then she can see her back through Andarna's eyes, and her relic sounds amazing. Love it. I know.
Like, if depending on how these books go, we've already decided that when all the books are out in a few years, we will get a tattoo. We won't get the tattoo before then, because
just in case terrible.
Something happens.
There's 4 books left.
Yeah,
so much could happen.
So when all 5 books are released, we're gonna go get tattoos for this book.
Yeah.
And this is not as big as this, obviously. I don't want a whole back piece. Like,
I kind of do. I won't, maybe. But I want it. Yeah. My whole back is empty. What else is going to go there?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah.
Now describe it.
So, yeah. So it's on her back. It's her black dragon from shoulder to shoulder. And then, like, on the inside, there's a golden dragon just inside of him.
So cute.
So cute.
Yeah. I wish gold was a color for tattoos.
Yeah.
But you can't get, like, metallic gold. I feel like you can get yellow, you can get, like, a goldy, like, yellowy color, but, like, metallic gold.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a thing.
I'm sure it'll be a thing. If it's, like, not a thing in some places, I'm sure it'll, like...
It'll show up sometime.
Yeah. It's just, I think it would be hard to see it.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah. So, this is we get a bit later this week that Andarna may change in the coming years a bit. Do you think her relic's gonna change?
I don't know, maybe.
I'm interested. But not the point. Anyway, so Violet tells Andarna and Taryn that she loves it, obviously, because it's amazing. And then Dane takes her face in his hands, which is a thing.
It is a thing. A thing he likes to do.
A thing he loves to do. And he says she has to know he would do anything to keep her safe. Except for break the rules.
Yes!
That's not anything! Anyway, fine. She says she knows, and then he kisses her.
Blech.
And, like...
I don't like it.
I don't either, but at first, Violet does. She's like, this is what she's wanted. She's always kind of had a crush on him, and she's like, yay! But there's no heat. She feels nothing. And she's just disappointed because she wanted to want this.
Yeah.
And she did at one point want this. And she looks into Dane's eyes and she sees that, like, he felt something.
Yeah.
Like, he's not feeling nothing like her. He's not feeling disappointed. So that's not good.
No.
So then we, like, just jump to the next morning and all of the bonded riders now get their own room. And the next morning, Violet is, like, waiting outside for Rhiannon, and she sees Sawyer come out of her room. And, like, there's a bunch of riders that have slept together last night. Yeah. It's, like, a big night for that.
Yeah. I actually really like it because, like, Rhiannon sleeps around, but, like, it's never, like, she's never judged for it.
No.
And, like, I also really like that, like, so her and Sawyer sleep together, but, like, it does not impact their relationship at all. Like, they stay friends.
It really doesn't. Yeah.
And I like that.
I do too. Violet's thinking, like, about how sore her ankle is, and if she were anywhere else, she would ask for crutches for it. So that's how bad her ankle is. It's sprained. All of the unbonded candidates have taken over all of the, like, duties that were less desirable. So, like, breakfast duty, getting up early, like, Violet doesn't have to do that anymore because the unbonded candidates have taken that over so that the riders can focus on flying and, I guess, get more sleep. Violet asks Rhiannon about Sawyer, and she just says she felt like celebrating, and she asks Violet why she hasn't heard of her celebrating. And Violet just says, like, she hasn't found anyone she wants to celebrate with. But Rhiannon asks about the moment she had last night with a certain squad leader. Mm-hmm. And Violet is, like, shocked that Rhiannon knows about this, but I'm like, you were on a field in front of
everybody.
Yeah. Everybody. Yeah. Your mother saw it. Yeah. His father saw it. Everybody saw it. Why are you surprised?
Yeah.
But anyway, Rhiannon is obviously like, dude, yes. But she says, like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's not even really a rule. It's just frowned upon that they sleep with somebody who is their commander.
Yeah. That they not. Like, don't.
It's frowned upon.
It's frowned upon.
Yeah, don't sleep with them. Yeah.
Yes.
To sleep together. Yeah. And Rhiannon's like, seriously, we could all die at any time. I really don't think it's a big deal if you were to sleep with him. Yeah. And you're like, fair. She makes a good point. Violet then tells her, like, she hopes that it would be something, but when he kissed her, there was nothing. And I love Rhiannon here. She's, like, super understanding and, like, empathetic, and she's like, oh, that really sucks. Like, I know you kind of had a thing for him. It sucks that he didn't feel anything. I like their relationship.
But I also love that Violet is, like, super, like, firm. Like, it's not like, you know how in a lot of books when there's love triangles, it's like, oh, I sort of have feelings for this person, but I sort of have feelings for this person, and I can't decide between them. Like, this is why at the beginning, I think last week we mentioned how, like, it acts like there's going to be a love triangle, but then there's not at all because of this moment. She, like, just shuts it down. Like, I thought I would feel something, but I don't. And that's it. Like, she doesn't try to feel something. She's not like, he's good for me, so I should try and feel something for him. Like, none of that. She's like, I thought I would feel something. I don't feel anything. That's it. Like, my thoughts of us being together are done.
Yeah. I do think it's because he, like, of the conversation they had shortly before when he was like, I wouldn't break a rule and I'd watch you die. Yeah. Like, I do think that has a big part of it because she's like, that's not how she loves. Like, if she loves somebody, she would do anything for them. Yeah. And she, like, didn't even love the golden dragon, but, like, put everything into save. Like, that's not who she is as a person. So I really think that she lost a lot of respect for him then. And, like, if Xaden didn't force him to say that, I don't know if this would have gone differently.
Yeah, so, that's true.
It's just interesting. So Riddick comes and meets up with them now, and he shows off his relic. It's on his arm. And obviously Violet can't show them hers because it's on her back. But he comments that that is a good thing, because if she's ever separated from Taryn, like, people won't automatically know that they're together.
Right.
And I'm like, I guess I get it, but I was just like, oh, I guess this is going to be a thing in a coming book. This is definitely foreshadowing. Mm-hmm. But then Rhiannon says hers is somewhere that he'll never see. I'm just kind of interested. I want to know where hers is now.
I feel like it's probably a tramp stamp.
I love it.
And I'm totally okay with it.
I love it.
Or, like,
maybe I'll get a tramp stamp of the of her whole shoulder tattoos. So they go to breakfast, and Oren is actually on breakfast duty. So Violet just picks up some fruit that is obviously in its own casing, like an orange and stuff, because she knows, like, nobody can tamper with it, and she's worried that he'll think to poison her because she did it to him and many other people. Yeah. They get to a fourth wing table that has like 3 seats empty, and they ask if they can sit there, and the people at the table just leave and say, "Sorry, Sorengale," and they're like, "What the fuck is going on?" But then they see Jack Barlow at a first wing table, and he's being shoved out of the table, and they're all very shocked, which, like, I think is dumb. I think you should have an idea of what's happening here.
Yeah.
But then Imogen actually sits with them and says it's because she, like, Violet bonded with Taryn, and it's always like this after Threshing. Like, Violet is now the rider with the most power because she has the most powerful dragon. So, like, people are going to either suck up to her or want to kill her or whatever.
Yeah, so all those people, when she went over to that table, they all left. They're like, "Oh my god, sorry, sorry you wanted this table. Okay, we'll move." Like, that's why they said, "Sorry, Sorengale," like, and left, is like, "Oh my god, we didn't mean to sit here, we're so sorry." Like,
yeah, she's like, which is also kind of, like, cringe.
You know,
but
she's like the big person on campus now.
Yeah. And then Quinn, who is the second year in their squad, who hasn't spoken to any of them up to now, comes and sits with them, and so does Sawyer, obviously, because they're friends. Quinn kind of tells them all that there was no use getting to know them before now because they were, like, more likely to die. And you're like, I get it.
Yeah.
I don't either. Anyway, I don't blame them. 2 third years in their squad come to sit with them too, and they're just like, "What the fuck is going on?" But you're like, obviously, everybody's gonna care about you guys now. Mm-hmm. And they're already, like, mid-conversation, and one of them says, like, they thought that Seaford would bond, and then Violet just says he tried to kill Andarna, and Violet assumes then that Taryn probably told the other dragons, and that's why no dragon bonded with him. So that's Oren.
Yeah.
That they're talking about. And then she kind of thinks, like, Jack did bond, but apparently his dragon is smaller. So, like, that's why he's kind of being forced out, because, like, he didn't get a good dragon. But at least he bonded. Which is still surprising. Like,
yeah.
I'm sure Taryn told everybody, that dragon, too, that he tried to kill. Yeah, so, Anyway, Imogen forces some sausage on Violet's plate and says, like, she needs to eat more protein, and Violet is like, what is going on?
Yeah, because if we don't forget
who Imogen is.
Imogen is the one who, like, broke her arm, like, broke her arm last week, and was like, she is her mom killed my parents and my sister. She's terrible. Yeah. I want to kill her. And now she's like, "Here, have some meat."
Yeah, it's something. It's something. Mm-hmm. But then Imogen says, like, after supper, Violet is hers, and they're gonna do weights together. And Violet looks over at Xaden at this kind of information, and then he looks at her, but then he looks at Imogen, and she's like, "Oh." He's setting this up because he wants me to be stronger so that I don't die and he doesn't die by association. Which is fair. She needs help.
Yeah.
So, take it wherever you can get it. So later that day, they're at flying lessons, and their professor tells them that there are only 92 riders, and Violet kind of thinks to herself, like, there were 101 dragons, plus Taryn, that were willing to bond. So, like, not even all of the dragons bonded during Threshing, which I don't know if that's weird or not, but we don't know. So, yeah, so they're the smallest class to date, and Violet kind of feels a bit guilty for bonding 2 dragons.
But can I just say that, like, neither of her dragons were up for Threshing. Like, like, Taryn wasn't in the list, and Andarna wasn't on the list, because Feathertails don't bond. And Taryn said he wasn't gonna bond. So, like, she's feeling guilty for taking 2 dragons that weren't even up for consideration for most people anyway.
Yeah.
So, like...
And, like, Taryn never would have bonded her if she wasn't in danger and helping out Andarna.
Yeah.
And Andarna might have been dead although I think she would have just flown away. I really think it was just a test for Violet. Like, she could have easily just flown away from the guys.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, yeah, she really shouldn't be feeling guilty. I agree. Shouldn't, I said, if that was unclear. Their teacher, professor, whatever, then tells them that their bonds are currently at their weakest, which we've heard already. So their only goal today is to stay on their dragons and not to die. Because if their dragon, like, if they can't stay on their dragon might just drop them and go pick one of the unbonded candidates, which is just, like, wild, but okay. Yeah. So then everybody, like, climbs up their dragon's leg, like that, like, warped wall type thing. And obviously she can't do that, so Taryn makes a ramp for her. And she feels a bit defeated by that, but Taryn says, like, he's seen her memories and he doesn't want a dagger in his leg, so this is more for his protection. Which I just love. I love it so much. So they like, start getting ready to fly or whatever, and Violet makes a comment about praying to the goddess of war for strength. And I only kept this in because Taryn says that the dragons don't believe in their puny gods. And I'm like, I just don't know if the gods are going to be important or not. Mm-hmm. And, like, it's so hard to know what is important because there's no second book yet, but very soon.
I know. It's literally less than a month now.
Yeah. I'm so excited.
It's amazing.
So Taryn is, like, following the flying maneuvers. Obviously, he's the second one to go because of who he is. But he's holding Violet with his magic, and she says, like, he can't do this all the time. Like, if they're in a fight, he's going to need his power for fighting. He won't be able to use it to, like, hold her in place. But he's like, I have enough power. It's not a big deal. And then they literally see somebody else. Well, he says somebody else fell, and the dragon let them die. And then he says that Glean, which is the dragon that dropped somebody, or they fell off of, chose poorly and apparently never bonds very strongly, which is interesting that bonds are different between, like, the strength of your bond can be completely different even if you're both bonded to dragons. Mm-hmm. Obviously Taryn bonds strongly, it seems.
But I also think it depends on who you pick as a person. If you pick a terrible person, I feel like your bond's going to be weak.
Yeah. But I think he did say that, like, Glean never bonds strongly. And it seems like Taryn always... But is it's because he doesn't know how to pick?
Yeah,
is that
that's
what
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Maybe he just doesn't understand the criteria in picking a person, so his bonds are weak because the person he picks is a terrible human.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know if we find out who he chose. I don't think it really matters. No. So anyway... Taryn and Violet are still talking about how, like, she needs to learn how to hold on her own. So he lets the power go, and she just immediately falls. Mm-hmm. And then she's, like, thinking about this other rider that just splatted, and she's like, shit. But obviously Taryn catches her, and he calls her stubborn silver human. And I don't know if that is going to be something, because, like, in my brain, I kind of think there's something, like, about her hair and about, like,
a prophecy or something.
Like a prophecy or something. Like, there's something to this silver thing. Yeah. And I don't, like, I feel like the dragons know something. Mm-hmm. But I'm also, like, just crazy. You know.
I don't know.
Digging into everything that could possibly.
Like, it could be anything.
I know. You're just, like, digging into every little thing, but, like, that's kind of what you have to do. Anyway. So during the whole practice, she ends up falling a bunch of times, but, like, she does try to stay on her own. So, like, she'll eventually get stronger, I guess.
But I love that strength of character in her. It's like, no, don't hold on to me. I don't care how many times I fall, but, like, you gotta let me do it on my own.
Yeah, I need to learn to do this. Yeah. So after supper, she's on her way to meet Imogen to strength train when Dane runs to catch up to her, and it's super awkward. Dane tells her that he thought she'd be fine when Taryn chose her. And you're what? Like, because she fell a bunch. But, like, what, like, her dragon's catching her. Her dragon believes in her. Mm-hmm. Why can't Dane believe in her? Anyway.
Ugh.
But he palms her face lightly while he's talking to her. And then he brings up the kiss, and he says it was a mistake. But he only says that it's a mistake because he's her superior. And he's like, maybe after graduation, or like if you end up in a different squad and I'm not your squad leader next year. But he's like, I want to be a wing leader next year, so I can't be like screwing you, basically. And she's like, oh shit, I didn't want us to do anymore because I want us to stay friends.
Yeah.
This is not. So,
and this is the only
not on
thing,
the same
like,
page.
I do wish she had said something here and been like,
yeah,
I agree with you, however, I think we should just be friends.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of just because she's, like, taken by surprise that, like, he apparently likes her, but he's not willing to, like, do anything because of this rule that isn't even really a rule. Like, it kind of makes him seem even worse in her mind. Mm-hmm. But we do get that conversation later this week, so that's good. Anyway, then Imogen takes her in, and they need to do, like, leg abductors are really the only exercise she can do because she has a bad ankle and arm, so she can only really work out certain body parts. And, like, Violet and Imogen kind of, like, you can tell that they're gonna develop a friendship if they spend this much time together. Like, you can kind of see it starting. Yeah. But then Violet asks Imogen if she's doing this because Xaden is making her, and she kind of snaps at her and says, like, she isn't allowed to ask about him. And Violet's like, oh, maybe they are together. And she immediately gets jealous. Which is not surprising. So a month basically passes now, and Violet has archive duty, and she's, I guess, every morning she has to go to the archives to bring back books and pick up books that anybody in the quadrant.
I thought it was for the professors.
It's mostly for the professors, but I think, like, other people can ask for books too.
Fun.
But I don't think.
Why can't we have that?
They do. We have libraries,
but not delivery services.
Oh yeah, yeah, that would be cool.
Can you imagine?
So, skip the dishes, but for books.
Yeah, but can you imagine a book, like, rental service that will drop it off and pick it up? Like, our biggest issue, or at least my biggest issue with going to the library, is that I'll forget to bring a book back.
Yeah, that's true.
On time. But, like, if there is somebody who will bring a book to my door and then 3 weeks later knock on the door and be like, I'm here to bring your book back. Yeah. All bets would be off, man.
Yeah, that's true. It's just also that I have money now and I just want to buy them. That's the other issue.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, that would be amazing. So we get a bit more, like, the archives really feel like home for Violet. Obviously, she spent a lot of time there with her father, and, like, she had planned to become a scribe, so, you know, makes sense. There's a first year there, Jacinda, who helps her, and they sign to each other. And, like, they studied together, and when they were both trying to become scribes, Violet, like, helped her so that she could make it into the quadrant, so... we also get scribes aren't really allowed to show any emotion, which I don't really get, but I'm assuming it'll come up at some point. But obviously, like, they are friends, and Violet's like, I wish I could give her a hug, but I'm not allowed. Yeah. But Violet basically gives her a list of books and the returns, and she asks if they have a copy of the Fables of the Baron, which is the book that we heard about last week that her father gave to her, but... her sister was like, you can't take that because are you willing to die for it, basically. And she knows that her sister was right. Like, she had too much shit packed. But Jacinda doesn't know the text that Violet's talking about, so Violet, like, explains that it's about wyverns and venom and magic, but, like, she's never heard of any of this. And we kind of got that last week, earlier this week, sorry, that, like, some people have never heard about wyverns and venom, but some of the kids have, so, like, only certain parents have told their kids these stories, kind of thing. But they're fables. Anyway, so she goes to look for it and the other books, But a professor of the scribe quadrant comes over with a group of first years and, like, talks to Violet and says, like, she was the most promising and, like, gets Violet to explain that, like, there isn't much fresh air down here to keep the risk of fire low, and, like, scribes have to wear veils to show that, like, no one and nothing is more important than the documents in books, which is kind of ironic when you read the end of this book, but... And Darna can feel that Violet is kind of sad here, and tells her, like, it's hard to love a second home as much as the first, but Violet says it's easy when the second home is the right one. So, like, she's really, like, we kind of got it earlier this week, but she really has given up on the thought of becoming a scribe. Like, she's really taken to being in the Dragon Quadrant, and, like, it is her home now, which is good. Jacinda comes back, but she couldn't find the book of fables. And Violet finds that really odd because the archive apparently has a copy of every book in existence except for, like, ultra rare or forbidden books. So you're like, weird that a book of fables would be either of those things. That'll never come up. Everyone's squad has been condensed because so many people died during Threshing, etc.
Well, didn't they say that 300 people made it across the parapet, and now there's 92 riders? Like,
yeah. And there's, like, I think 30 or so
36 unbonded. So, yeah. So, like, that's 120-ish.
Yeah. A lot of people have died.
A lot of people have died.
Yeah. I think now each wing only has 2 squad. No. The wing has 3 sections, and maybe the sections only have 2 squads each.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway. It's whatever. There's too much. I can't get my head around it all. But whatever. So they now have 2 more first years and 2 second years put into their squad. But these 4 refuse to sit with anyone who has a rebellion relic. So, like, they don't sit with Violet and her friends because obviously they sit with Imogen and stuff. So it's like...
Yeah.
It's shitty. So they're at breakfast and... they're talking, and Sawyer got his powers, so he was sparring, and his sword curved on its own to save him, so he's a metallurgist, and he's the first of them to actually display power. We also get here that apparently if your dragon doesn't give you your power by about 6 months, you just explode. So, like, not that there's enough things trying to kill you, this is another thing, too. You're like, cool, okay.
So they call this, their signet.
Yes. So they got their relic, and then their signet is the power goes into their relic and manifests into magic. So his signet is metal.
Fun.
Yeah. So, after breakfast, they see Jack talking to a girl, Caroline, and this girl ended up bonding with Glean. So the dragons who want to bond really can just lose a rider and bond again immediately with one of the unbonded candidates if they want to. So it's wild. Because it's been a month since Threshing, basically. So it's just crazy. At flight training this day, she only falls about a dozen times, which is progress, really, because she usually falls more. So after training, Dane shows up, and he is very angry, and Taryn is, like, defensive as hell, and he tells her to tell him that he'll scorch him, like, where he stands if he hurts her, and Dane promises, like, he would never hurt her. But he is super pissed that she can't keep her seat. And she's just like, it's not a secret. Everybody knows I can't. Like, I'm working on it. I'm doing better. Like, why are you so pissed now?
And, like, how has he not seen it? He's her squad leader. Has he never flown with them?
I guess not. But it's so weird.
If
like,
everybody else in the wing knows but him, that's a him problem.
Yeah. But he does kind of have a point, because he's like, he's upset that Violet didn't tell him, and they're supposed to be best friends. And he's like, why wouldn't you tell me that you're having trouble? And she's like, yeah, we are best friends. So she kind of tries to make a joke about it, but, like, he's super worried about her. And then he says, first it was bending the rules for the gauntlet, and that she, like, acted dishonorably in the way that she, like, got up the gauntlet, and, like, Amber, like, had words with him about it, and he's like, she's like, you didn't, yeah, she's like, you didn't come talk to me about that at all, so why are you bringing that up? And he's like, well, Amber told me, and she's like, but...
That's the wing leader that called her out on it.
Yeah, and he's like, well, she's a wing leader. Obviously, I have to take her word for it. And she's like, yeah, but Xaden said the way I got up was fine, so why aren't you taking Xaden's word on it? And you're like, he's got some prejudices too. Mm-hmm. So he basically says he's terrified that she won't make it to graduation, and she just laughs at him, which I'm here for it. Like, she's just done.
She's done.
She's so done at this point, and I'm like, finally. But she says, like, this is who you really are at your core. Someone so obsessed with the rules who doesn't know when to bend or break them for a friend. Right? And she says that he's so focused on the least she's capable of doing. And she tells him the reason they won't be more than friends is because of his lack of faith in her. And he'll be some of the bullshit that this place cuts away from her.
Yes, queen!
I love it.
I love it, like, so much.
And it's like, earlier he was like, this place really cuts away the bullshit and lets you know who you are.
So she essentially called him bullshit.
I love it.
It's amazing.
I needed it. So she just walks away from him and catches up to Rhiannon and, like, goes to the courtyard. And she sees, like, a bunch of people are there. Xaden's there, hanging out with Garrick. And Xaden, like, arches an eyebrow at her. Arches an eye.
A whole eye.
And she just flips him off because she's just like, I can't deal with anybody else right now. She's just so annoyed.
Do you think that he was like arched an eyebrow as in like, what's up, like what's wrong? Like, yes. Do you think he heard that conversation through shadows? Or do you think
I think he did.
Or do you think he's just like arching an eye like, hey?
No, I think he heard it. I think he hears everything. Everything ever. So she catches up to Rhiannon, and Rhiannon asks if she's all right, and she starts to say, like, Dane is an asshole, but then somebody is yelling, make it stop, and holding their head, and it's another cadet, another rider. And in, like, a minute, Xaden moves just ahead of her to, like, in a protective stance, and you're like, oh my god! But everyone just circles.
Can I just say that I love how when Xaden does it, we're like, oh!
Yeah, I know.
If Dane tries to do it, we're like, oh!
Punch him in the face.
You're the worst.
I can't. We're the worst too. But everybody in the courtyard kind of circles around this rider who's losing it. And he starts, like, saying what people are thinking. And he turns to Dane and says, is Violet gonna hate me forever? Why can't she just see that I want to keep her alive? So, like, this is actually what he's thinking. Like, he's not necessarily a bad person. And, like, she didn't call him a bad person or anything, but she's right, he doesn't have faith in her.
Yeah.
And that hurts. So, like, I get it. So they realize that this kid is an intrinsic, and apparently that is a death sentence. So he can hear everybody's thoughts. And, like, he can't handle it, because, like, you can only imagine how hard that would be if you could hear every thought that everyone's having around you. Like, you would obviously lose it.
Yeah.
So Violet asks Xaden to do something because he's right next to her, but he tells her to recite book stuff because, like, he's like, you obviously don't want him to know any secrets, so, like, recite book stuff or he might just say what you're thinking. So she thinks about outposts outside of wards, which is just a little tidbit for what happens later. But the kid turns to Garrick then and starts saying what Garrick is thinking and says he'll know about but then shadows snake up this kid's body and gag him. So that's obviously Xaden.
Mm-hmm. So Garrick has something he doesn't want people to know about.
Yeah. But then Professor Carr, who is like the one that helps them with their signets, comes out and they're like, he's an intrinsic, and he just snaps his neck and then carries him inside. You're like, fuck.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
So it's later, and it doesn't really make sense, but Violet is talking to her father about sources, like primary sources. And she asks him, like, she's also a younger person, and she asks him what if she wants to be a rider. But a voice cuts in telling her to wake up if she doesn't want to die. So it was all a dream, and she rolls over, and a sword is coming down, and it ends up hitting her corset, so it doesn't actually, like, slice her in half, you'd assume. And there are 6 on-bodied cadets in her room, and then the person who let them in ends up running away. So we don't know who that is at this point. But luckily Violet is awake. She falls to the floor. She grabs the knife. Like, I think she had 2 knives under her pillow. And she throws a dagger into a girl's arm, and then she slices 2 other people, and she kicks someone. But, like, there's too many people. She's getting overwhelmed. And, like, Taryn is in her head at this time, too. Like, telling her, like, things that she can and can't do, and it's, like, madness. Yeah. But Oren, who is one of the guys there, grabs her by the throat and, like, lifts her into the air, and obviously she cannot breathe. But Taryn promises her that he's almost there. And
Taryn is too big to get into a room. I wonder who he's talking about.
I know. She's like, he who? And you're like, ugh, but fine. But Oren says, your dragon is mine, and then, like, releases her neck, but holds her, like, to his chest and brings a blade to her throat. Yeah. And then the door flies open, but then a shriek pierces, and she hears Andarna say mine, or screech mine, really. And she feels power in her body, and then everyone is frozen except for Violet. So Violet shoves Oren's arm away, and Andarna tells her to go quickly because she can't hold this. And then she, like, moves over to the doorway, but Xaden is obviously in the way because he just burst into the room and his shadows are, like, going mad, but they're also stopped midair. And then chaos resumes, and Xaden's eyes snap to her, and he's like, what the fuck? But he doesn't really
react at the moment.
Yeah, he's got other problems. And he just snaps his fingers and says, you're all dead. And then basically kills them. But
I love it!
It's amazing, yes. It's, like, we've said it a few times, like, it's against the codex to attack someone in their sleep. So, like, he doesn't need care. Recourse. Yeah, he's just immediately kills everybody with his shadows. And then for Oren, he picks up the dagger with his shadows and, like, slices his neck. Yikes. You're like, yee. Garrick and Bodhi show up, and Violet thinks of, like, how Bodhi and Xaden kind of look so similar because they are cousins. Yeah. But obviously she's more attracted to Xaden. Which you're like, it's funny how much she's thinking about how attracted she is to him right now. Like, he
just killed 6 people.
He killed 6 people. She's in shock because she thought she was dead. Yeah. Like, but Garrick and Bodhi are basically there to clean up. Violet is 100% in shock. Like, she doesn't even feel the pain for a bit because she's just like, what the fuck? But then she does start feeling the pain. And, like, Xaden gets her boots and cloak and tells her to pull her shit together and, like, asks her where she's hurt. And she tells him her ribs are bruised because, like, she took a sword to them. Yeah. And he's like, what the fuck? But Taryn tells her, like, she can trust him. And she does tell him that her vest has dragon scales. And she says that's how she's lived so long. And he says there are many reasons she's lived so long. Because he has so much faith in her.
Oh, I was thinking he's protecting her. He's not, but now he is.
Yeah. Well, he is now, yeah. But, like,
I know. It was more of a you're talented sort of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, she has other things in her arsenal. So it's 5 a.m. and now there are, like, 5 fully dressed men in her room, and they all have rebellion relics. Like, 4 of them are cleaning up the 6 bodies and Xaden. And she's like, what the fuck? Like, why are they all dressed? It's 2 a.m. Like, there's no way anyone could get dressed that fast. But they can't really deal with it now. So he tells her to, like, show him where she's injured, basically, because he wants to check that her ribs aren't broken. Yeah. So he has to undo her corset, which, like, completely turns her on. Like, he knows his way around a corset.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, yes, that would.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Just
that
yes.
is all.
Yeah.
But he just says, yeah, her ribs are bruised. They're not actually broken or anything. And then he drops in front of her and puts her boots on her and does them up for her. Which is so sweet. And all she can think is how she wants to run her hands through his hair, and it looks so soft.
Well, because well, just think, like, he's on the floor putting her boots on, like he is at vagine level,
prime position,
prime vagine level right now.
Yes. So anyway, he does that, and then he gives her a cloak, and then they are out of the room, and she's like, what the fuck, where are we going? But he takes her to a secret passageway that she didn't know existed, and she's, like, struggling to keep up with him, because, like, she bruised her ribs, and is in pain, and shock, and everything. But he says he isn't going to baby her like Atos does, and, she says, like, maybe Dane isn't wrong. Like, I was almost killed just then, and that was when I was supposed to be safe. Like, when you're sleeping is the only time that you shouldn't be able to be killed. But then she tells Xaden not to think about suggesting that they sleep together to, like, keep her safe, and he's just like, I don't sleep with first years. I didn't even sleep with first years when I was a first year. And you're like, ugh, Xaden. And then Xaden kind of tells her, like, she's gonna need to get over not killing people, because she, like, got somebody in the shoulder the same way she got Jack, and then she stabbed some other people, but none of them were killing blows. And he's like, you kind of need to get over that, because, like, after graduation, that's all we are, is killing machines. Like, that's something you're gonna have to do. Yeah. Which sucks, obviously. But then he tells her that they're going to ask Taryn what the hell is going on, and how those cadets got into her room. And she just shrugs, because she knows he won't believe her about who let them in. So they just... And we don't know who it is yet anyway.
But they like magically, I don't know if she did or if it was Xaden that did hers. Because they magically lock their doors, right?
I think they're all always magically locked, and you can only open them.
But, like, I thought...
Once you're a rider.
Yeah, but I didn't think, like, there's no way that Orin would be able to open her door with magic. Well, he's unbonded. So none of the unbonded people that were in there could have unlocked her door and gotten in. So obviously that means somebody who is a rider let these 6 unbonded into her room. Yeah.
And, like, when she was immediately attacked, she saw who it was, and then they ran away before Xaden showed up. Yeah. But she, in her head now, she's like, she can't tell him because he won't believe her, which is sad. But he tells her, like, she kind of realizes, like, they must be on their way to the flight field, because he says that he's going to go talk to Taryn. Mm-hmm. She's like, you can't talk to Taryn. He's not your dragon. But I guess we'll see. But he asks her to keep the tunnel a secret. I'm like, how does he know about all these secrets? But they have to, like, go uphill in this tunnel now, and she's struggling a lot. And then he asks if she needs to be carried. And she's like, that sounds like more of an insult than an offer. And he's like, you're learning. And I'm like, I wanted him to carry her.
I know. I wish he would have insisted and been like, I'm carrying you anyway. You're in pain.
Yeah, but he didn't. In my headcanon, he carries her home. But he does actually slow down for her, which is good, because she has a bruised rib. She then asks him what he was doing tonight, because he was fully dressed, and, like, so were the other 4. But he just says it's third year business, and she's like, cool, that's all. So they end up at the flight field, and Taryn, Andarna, and Sigale all show up. And Andarna, like, immediately runs towards her and is, like, so worried about her, which is just, like, so sweet. I love Andarna. But Xaden asks what the hell Taryn is channeling to her.
Yeah, so what magic did she use to go from being wrapped up in Oren's arms about to die to over next to Xaden? Like, something happened.
Yeah. And Taryn responds, it's none of Xaden's business, and Violet goes to tell Xaden what Taryn said, but Xaden just says that he can hear him. And you're like, what? You're not supposed to be able to talk to other people's dragons. They argue, and Taryn says, do not dare try to read me, human, or you'll regret it, to Xaden. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, we don't know.
And we don't get anything about that in this book. So just, like, put a pin in this for later.
We will forget this, though, is the thing.
Well, it's next month. We're gonna get another book soon.
But it might not come back in the next book.
It might not come back in the next book. God damn. Anyway, we'll see. But Taryn starts, like, curling his tongue, kind of like dragons do before they light someone up. So Violet is worried that he's obviously going to kill Xaden, which would then kill them all. Yeah. It would kill them all, likely.
No fighting in between you two.
Yeah. So, but she stands in front of him, because obviously she doesn't want him to die. But then she hears Sigale in her head, too, saying that, like, this is the first thing that they agree on, not killing Xaden. Yeah. So that's weird that she can hear Sigale. Then he asks how the hell she was out of Oren's reach, and Andarna says, nature likes all things in balance, and Xaden can't hear Andarna, but obviously the other dragons and Violet can.
Yes.
But Andarna explains dragons shouldn't bond until they are full grown, and we get, like, the younger dragons have power, but they can't give it through a signet. So they can only, like, they could give it to a rider, but it's not the same as having a relic and a signet. Like, they can just, like, give their power to them.
Yeah. Because, so the way I took it was that, so a dragon has power, like just raw magical power, and they channel it through the signet to the person, but in that channel, the power becomes the rider's and it manifests for the rider. Like, like Taryn, if he like gives Violet power, it's not necessarily going to be the same power that he gave his last rider. Like, they all manifest differently depending on who the rider is. So I guess they're saying that for full-grown dragons, they channel their raw power through the relic to the rider, and that rider, it manifests in a different way for each rider. But because Andarna is saying that she is not a full-grown dragon, and their power, they don't channel it through the relic and make it her own. They just can give them their own magical power.
Yeah. And it's like, it seems like every Feathertail, like we get now in a second that a Feathertail is just a baby dragon. It seems like every Feathertail might have a different power when they're young, and then as they grow up, they're able to channel into their rider, but they lose that power. Yeah. So Andarna can stop time is basically what we're learning.
Yes.
But she also says, like, she's not a hatchling. She's 2, and she should be full grown in a year or 2. And Violet is just, like, super shocked that anybody let a baby basically bond. Because, like, that's why people don't know anything about Feathertails, because they're the babies and they're protected.
Yeah.
But
so none of the humans know that Feathertails are baby dragons.
Yeah, like, they just think that they're little golden dragons that are too small and don't want to bond.
Yeah, like they don't know anything about like, dragon mating processes and, like, how babies are born, like, because they they try to keep the Feathertails in the veil.
Yeah.
To protect
and, like,
them.
Obviously, in a year or two, they're gonna find out. Because, like, Violet's not gonna have a Feathertail anymore. Yeah. So, like, this is gonna change the world.
Yes. I wonder if they thought of that. Like, when the dragons were, like, debating whether she should do this or not. I know. Like, this is going to open up a huge, like, everybody's going to be aware of the secret then.
Yeah. I know. It's wild. Xaden then is like, what the fuck?
Uh-oh.
Is she yours? Like, did you guys have a baby and hide it from me?
Oh.
But... Because he's almost, like, it almost seems like he's a bit heartbroken. But they say no, like, her dragon parents died before she was hatched. But we also get, like, Feathertails don't bond because they're too unpredictable. And a rider could drain them. Like, they could take all of their magic, use all, like, if Violet stopped time for any longer, she could easily have drained all of Andarna's magic and killed her, and then ended up killing herself.
Yeah.
And this is where they're like, if leadership found out about this, about, like, being able to use Feathertail's magic, they would be hunted, because people wouldn't need signets. Like, you wouldn't need to be...
But isn't it still the Feathertail's choice to bond?
I guess. But, like, if they knew, they could... probably get some Feathertails to decide to bond. Like, you could...
Convince them,
likely. And so, like, they don't want leadership to find out about this, is obviously the point here.
Yeah.
But Andarna then says that she stopped time, and Violet is just shocked. And you're like, well, what did you think she did?
Yeah.
Like, obviously she stopped time. I don't know
like,
why you're
everything
so
stopped, and then you moved.
Yeah. And she tells Xaden all of this, because obviously he can't hear what she's saying. But Andarna is, like, exhausted. So, like, Violet is, like, she's completely drained. But Violet is like, thank you so much. Let's not do this again. Yeah. But Violet then asks if, like, Professor Carr is going to kill her, because he killed the cadet the other day for being intrinsic, I think they called it.
Yeah.
But
I don't think this is the same power at all.
I know, but I guess if you could stop time, like, you could sneak into places, find out anything. Yeah, like, there's many uses for this.
Yeah.
But they are all just, like... And I guess it's a power that nobody has had, so it is a
rare...
It is different and rare. But they all basically agree there that nobody is going to find out about this. And they tell her that, like, most Feathertail's gifts disappear with maturity, so she likely won't have this power later on. So the three dragons leave, and Xaden tells Violet to promise she won't tell anyone about the power. And she, like, obviously agrees, because she cares about Andarna. And then he says they need to find out how the cadets got into her room, and she says there was a rider there, and that rider must have unlocked the door, and he asks who it was, and she doesn't want to tell him because she doesn't think he's going to believe her, but he says they're going to need to trust each other at some point, obviously, since the rest of their lives depend on it, and he says to tell him who it was. That's where the chapter ends.
Ooh, I wonder who it was. I know who it is, but...
What?
Actually,
you read ahead?
Yeah. And I will say this next bit where we find out and, like, we see the repercussions of that are one of my favorites. Like, I love it so much.
Yeah, it is good.
But yeah, I loved this week. It was so jam-packed full of stuff, but I really like that, you know, we're really getting into, like, I just like that the whole story was not taken up with, like, her, like, getting her dragon, like, because I feel like a lot of stories, like, that getting the dragon bit would be the end.
Yeah, right? It could easily have been, like, everything that happened up to getting the dragon could easily have been its own book.
Yeah.
Which is, like, why my mind is blown that there's another 4.
Yeah.
Like, what is going to happen?
Yeah, I know. So both of us are quite worried because, like, as you could probably tell, both of us are team Xaden here. But, you know, we're both very worried that a Tamlin the Tool situation might unfold.
Yes.
Or, like,
even a Chaol.
Or a Chaol. Or somebody dies. Or, like, I think both of us are quite...
A divergent, if you will.
I hate it so much. So, fingers crossed. Like, I wish she would tell us. Because, like, SJM told us that Bryce and Hunt she was like, they're endgame, they're mates. Like, she said
doesn't mean no one's gonna die.
But kind of does. She's a happy ever after author.
I don't know. I'm not taking that to mean that no one's gonna die.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that our main couple's not gonna die. You don't believe it, but I sort of do. Anyway, okay. So I'm just let me have this.
Well, we'll see semi-soon, too, in January.
Anyway, yeah, so I guess I really am concerned about somebody. Like, we're in book 1. There's 4 more books to go. Like, what is going to happen?
Yeah.
Anyway.
This is why we don't like new series.
This is why we don't like new series. But we're just going to wrap it up here for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in any of our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions on books we should read, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or check us out on Instagram, Facebook at coffeeandcoread, or on TikTok at coffee.coread.
Yeah, so next week we're going to be reading chapters 20 to 29, so make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.